We got He-Man, Ghostbusters, and more. What is it, 1984? We do have Chris Gore. I'm like Dr. Seuss this morning. There's warning. It's Midnight's Edge in the morning. Greetings, everybody. I'm Tom Connors, the one and only. And with me is the boss man, Andre. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing the best I can, and I'm doing wonderful because we have one of my most favorite guests along today, the one, the only, Chris Gore. How you doing?
Tom, thanks for having me. Andre, I hope you're having a good day today.
Oh, absolutely. And so especially now when we get to talk about such exciting topics, and I do mean that genuinely, there's no sarcasm, genuine exciting topics like He-Man, Kevin Smith, Ghostbusters, G.I. Joe, so 80s and toy properties, both of which rule, and we have someone with us that is personally connected, at least in a professional sense, to someone involved in making them. So I'm very excited for today.
It's going to be a good conversation.
Yes, I think so. I absolutely think so.
And we got a great crowd joining us this morning. We got a question already for Chris. Are you related to Al?
I am not. I am not related to Al Gore. However, I did meet him once. I did meet him once at the Sundance Film Festival, and I walked up to him. And this is when An Inconvenient Truth. This was about the year before the movie. Yeah. So it premiered at Sundance, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hello, pleasure to meet you." And he was so affable and friendly, and he looked at my badge and he said, "Hey, cuz." And we took a photo, and then we realized that we may be distantly related just because my dad grew up on a farm in Indiana, and he's from a farm as well. So his family came from farmland. So we're thinking, well, we may be distantly related because Gore is not all that common of a name. But I am not directly related, and he won't take my phone calls. So there you go.
Was he like, "Hello there, cuz, can I tell you about Man Bear Pig?"
It's a little something like that, but I thought that the thing that really struck me about him was how different he was than the person who ran for president. He was so stiff and boring and overproduced. His off-camera personality was so much better. I thought, wow, if you were just like that, you would have won instead of this, nearly winning, whatever. But, hey, it is what it is, but I was fortunate to meet him at one time.
Yeah. Well, at least I got to give him credit that he at least publicly took humor with his South Park portrayal.
Yeah, true. And thank you, Neil, for your kind words. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Chris is awesome, and we're so glad to have him here as always. And he's always welcome anytime, but we always got to beg him. Like,
you don't have to beg me.
Please, Chris.
I think I told you, my life is very scheduled. I'm very much about I've got this meeting, I have this commitment, I have this promise I got to keep. I'm all about I gotta deliver on. I gotta do what I say I'm gonna do. And a funny story about that. When I first moved to Los Angeles from Michigan, maybe this is a Detroit thing. If I said I was gonna do something with somebody, hey, I'm gonna mail you this videotape, or I'm gonna do this, or I'll do this. Whenever I would do that for people, it was like I did a magic trick. They never expected that I would actually do what I said I was going to do. So I just find that that's a sad reality of Hollywood, is that people are so full of shit. And I'm happy that I can say that on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. No, don't censor yourself. You're more than welcome to say stuff like that. And we're so grateful to have you here. And that sentiment is shared by our very good friend and compatriot, Mexican Iron Man, who says for $14.99, hail the great Chris Gore. Been watching all your videos and movie making. You rock. Oh, and Andre and Tom, I'm dedicating one of my red light cybers on my wall to Kevin Smith. Hail Midnight's Edge and Mr. Gore.
Wow.
So, that's
thank you, awesome. Mexican Iron Man. Thank you, Mexican Iron Man. I really appreciate that.
Very, very cool. And we have quite a good crowd here. We have more than 600 people watching. We have some regular, we have some new faces, we have accidental tourists here. Just another Redshirted here. That's a cool name. Dr. Awesome thinks that Al Gore was great on Futurama. I haven't seen that, but I'm sure that he was.
Didn't he actually do the voice for that one? Was that an actual cameo with him on that? Or
maybe. I don't know. I was interested. I haven't seen it.
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, after South Park, then why not? Yeah, we have Thanos 2024 here. Is here. And I also saw that we have filmmaker Alejandro Montoya Marin here. Everyone should go and check out his debate with the guys over at Midnight's Edge Espanol yesterday, who had an epic debate on He-Man. And he also sends a super chat saying, hey gents, looking forward to the chat. Big fan of Chris Gore. Thank you for all the support you give indie cinema.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And Sander Hammerslag also saw your videos. Many people have done that. So it's very, very cool to have you here. But Tom, for those that don't already know Chris Gore, and before we get into the main topic, why don't you give like a very brief introduction of who Chris Gore is? What has he done? And who does he know in the industry?
Well, he knows just about everybody. Chris, of course, you may recognize him most from Attack of the Show or the X Show from FX. But of course, Chris has worked on some independent films and lots of other great projects. And of course, he has a vast knowledge of pop culture and film. And much like our buddy Robert Meyer Burnett, he kind of comes from the same. I say you guys are cut from kind of the same cloth. It's like I'm talking to brothers almost. It's weird. I told him this like not too long ago. It's like you two are kind of almost like two of the same half. It's really strange when I talk.
Well, that's true, and we've known each other since the '90s, having worked on Sci-Fi Universe magazine, which I started with Mark Altman back in the '90s. It was sort of like Film Threat, but only about like sci-fi and fantasy and whatnot. So yeah, so Robert, and oddly enough, Robert lives about 2 miles from me in Pasadena. So it's hilarious.
And of course, Film Threat is your other claim to fame. And if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, we do suggest that. And I think our wrenches are sharing that in the chat as well. And of course, you've also been doing some really great interviews over at now the name just escaped me.
Film Courage. Film
Courage. Thank you. Yes, and those have been just ripping up YouTube, being shared quite a bit throughout the community. A lot of our friends have brought them up to us as well, and we've talked about them not only behind the scenes, but on shows like Friday Night Tights and stuff like that. So, yeah, you are one of those guys. I don't know how else to put it. I mean,
yeah, well, yeah, it's whenever anyone asks who is Chris Gore, I'm always anxious to hear the answer because I'd like to know. So I appreciate that, Tom.
Super nerd.
Yeah, and you also give some great film recommendations because Etienne Falardeau also says, how many film recommendations will we get today? More than 500. So yeah, Tom, you need to have the Chris Gore recommends meme ready on standby.
Chris recommends.
Great.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Before we get into the main topic, I'm going to run through a couple of super chats. And also, if you all could help us out by spreading the word that we're talking live right now. So just hit that like in advance.
Master Sidearms has
and
and
we promise that you're going to like it. And if not, then you can tell us why not in the comments. But also hit that share. So help us share the stream because this platform doesn't always do a great job in advertising the fact that we are indeed live.
Yeah, and Master Sidearms here has a possible fact about Chris. Chris helped train Elon Musk in naming children. So
that is untrue. It is an untrue fact. But Master
Can you prove it's not true? No,
I can't prove it's not true. But Master Sidearms, thank you. That was very creative. A creative use of facts.
Yeah, I believe that's what we call alternate facts.
Yes, true. I'll take it.
Let's run through a couple of super chats. I'm going to begin with the ones that we can't show on screen. The first ones that came in said for $5. Hello, gents. Hello, everyone. And Xenobit asks first, did you see the live-action He-Man movie that came out in 2011? Chris Hemsworth played He-Man and Tom Hiddleston played Skeletor. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
He's not totally wrong.
It's not totally wrong. I mean, you have like this tragic brother story in the He-Man mythos as well.
Mhm.
Skeletor is, spoiler, He-Man's uncle. Because Skeletor is the firstborn and the rightful heir to Eternia's throne, not King Randor.
A lot like the Frost Giants, yeah.
Yeah. Xenobit also said for another $5, who would win in an arm wrestling match? Abby from The Last of Us 2 or Teela from He-Man Revelations? I think
Chris Gore.
I have no opinion on that. I don't know. I don't know the powers well enough. I would say Teela would lose. I'm going to say that.
I think they're going to be very evenly matched, but Teela, being a trained warrior from birth, is probably going to win out in the end. Is my point of view there. But still, that's a fight of raw, brute, manly strength.
Well, it depends. Does Abby have a baseball bat? No, I guess the answer is no matter who wins, we all lose. I don't know.
And Willie Woodward says, hi, Mr. Gore. Found your videos on film coverage very intriguing. P.S. Sent my argument on why big tech isn't taking over Hollywood a while ago. Not sure you saw it.
Oh, wow. I would have to, yeah, definitely. My DMs are open on all social platforms. So send that to me for sure. I fear that big tech is taking over, especially Apple TV making moves. And I'm excited for Foundation, which is coming out on Apple TV Plus. So we'll see. I think I don't know. I'd like to hear the argument for sure, and I'd like to believe that you're true. Your assessment is accurate.
Yeah,
So.
and then Filmlars said for 200 Danish krona, hail Midnight's Edge. Got nothing clever to say. Here's a little money for pizza. Well, thank you. We really appreciate that. Pizza rules. And Jason Gallagher points out for 5 Swiss franc that Humble Bundle has a Judge Dredd bundle with 54 classic comics, including Case Files 1 to 5, worth getting. Yes, indeed. Especially Case Files number 5. I recommend that those who are new to Judge Dredd and just want to see what it's about, begin with Case Files number 5. And if you are into that, then go back and check out 1 to 4. But it's better to already be invested by the time you read those. It took a little time for them to find their feet. They do in Case Files 5. Nikki D says for $5, both Fast 9 and Black Widow saw steep second weekend box office drops. Think this will be a trend for other big upcoming franchise films this year? Chris, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, if they're available on video on demand, the second weekend drop will be dramatic like Black Widow. I think that Black Widow on Disney Plus was a huge mistake, a miscalculation. It was fine for the pandemic times, but if you live where I live, nobody cares about masks anymore, right? Everyone's done with it. People are over it. But if you've got a choice, because it's expensive to go see a movie, and if you've got a choice to just watch it at home, where no one's kicking the back of your seat and snacks are much cheaper, people will choose home. I think they're making a huge miscalculation with Dune, and having it on HBO Max it makes it less special of an experience, the fact that you can see it. So they left money on the table with Black Widow by making it available on Disney Plus so soon, which was day and date. And I think that strategy is done because I think the country is done with lockdowns. We're not out of the woods with this, with everything related to that which shall not be named, but I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to get you guys in trouble. But
yeah, you can kind of get around it. Yeah,
I'm trying to get around it. But what I'm saying is that that was a strategy that worked during the pandemic. We're not in it now. I believe we're further out of it than we are at the beginning, and these studios need to go back. Otherwise, we're not going to see $1 billion at the box office for years.
What about Fast 9 though? Because that was only theatrical.
Well, it was also a terrible movie, so that also
It was the Fast and the Furious in space, literally.
Yeah, it was a kid playing with Hot Wheels. I mean, it was god awful. So, I mean, that actually means something too, word of mouth, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. So they've got to change that strategy. I'm disappointed about Dune. So, because I think it hurts its chances.
No, I agree with you 110%. And I mean, I've brought that up before too, about this whole idea that, yeah, sure, during those times it was one thing, but now, there's a reason why movies had a stigma to them if they didn't come out in theaters, right? For years. And that was always kind of a big selling point. Even if a movie flopped, it was still a point where like it still was in theaters and all this kind of stuff. So at the video store, even if it was a flop, you would still get that over the straight to video sequel or something that came out, or something back in the day. And I feel like the same thing now, to where you're seeing that on streaming is like, oh yeah, I remember seeing the preview for that movie come out in theaters. I think that'll make people click on it a lot more than if it's something that comes straight to streaming, because there's that stigma to it. It's like, oh, do I really want to watch Tremors 8?
I haven't seen the last 3 Tremors.
I know, me either, to be honest with you.
A few months ago, actually, come to
the last one I watched had what's his face from Scream in it, Jamie Kennedy. That's all.
That's the last one that I saw too, where he played like Gumboot's son or something. Like that.
Yeah, it was really dumb.
Yeah, and the next one looks even dumber, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but again, going back to the point, like, yeah, there is something to be said about a movie that's in theaters. And Dune, I agree with you. I've said it myself, Chris. I can't. HBO must have handed them like $100 million check. There is no way Legendary would have went through with this otherwise.
A lot, but maybe more than that. I mean, I actually was at that IMAX event last week, and I saw the first 10 minutes of this movie, and it's a game changer. I mean, it's an absolute game changer. You have to see it in IMAX. There's so much detail, and also having been familiar at least with the first 4 books, I tried to read the books after the first 4, and I just didn't care. The first 4 kind of tell the story. That sort of the crux of the story that matters to me is in the first 4 Dune books, and what Denis Villeneuve was able to capture in that first 10 minutes. And I also saw the carrier scene where you're familiar probably with the David Lynch Dune, where there's a spice. Very
much so, yes.
Yeah, spice mining craft, mining spice. The workers are in trouble. Duke Leto comes down with Liet Kynes in the ship to save the workers, and a worm is on the way. I saw that scene, and it's beyond explanation in terms of just like, especially seeing it on an IMAX screen. I'm at every level, visually, the use of sound, the original. I feel like the problem with movies that have come out post Star Wars is they're all influenced by Star Wars, meaning like we've heard that phrase, pop culture eats itself. Well, I fear we're never going to see a Star Wars movie that is original, in the sense that it always owes way too much to previous Star Wars films. So there's becomes a sameness about it. I think that's why The Mandalorian, which did have highlights, certainly there was it's okay. It's a TV show, right? There's familiar sounds, familiar environment. We're always going back to the same planets. Dune is a wholly new vision. And the fact that he's packed as much story into, I believe the running time is now 2.5 hours. And I'm sure
something along those lines. That sounds about right. Yeah, it's not as long as you would think. It's a comfortable, probably like 2 hours 10 minutes of pure story time, excluding credits.
Yeah,
which is fine given which part of the story they're telling. Because remember, it's not the full story that was told in the David Lynch movie. It's half that story.
Yeah, it's actually a perfect break. I read up on some rumors of where they kind of end it. And what's interesting is, so I saw the first 10 minutes of the movie. The movie begins Dune Part 1. It says Part 1 is actually in the title. So that's on the screen. That got a gasp in the theater, which was packed. I saw it at the AMC on the IMAX.
I just hope that they're going to make Part 2. By the way, I can tell you exactly where they quit it.
Yeah, I know some people who work in special effects, and I'm told that it's in pre-production. It's in pre-production. My feeling is that they will save an announcement of the follow-up when Dune is released. But my understanding is that they're going to do a trilogy of movies, which will encompass the first 2 books. So the second movie is supposed to be called Dune Prophet, and the third film is Dune Messiah, which is the first 2 books told in 3 movies, if that makes sense. So, and it makes sense because Dune Messiah is kind of an epilogue to the events that happen in the first Dune book, which are pretty incredible. So, I've just been a Dune fan since I was in high school. I read the book in high school. I was around the same age. I was like 14 years old when I read the first book. Then I read it every summer through high school because it just blew my mind. And the little details that he captured, like how Mentats, how their brains work. There's this little thing where Thufir Hawat is in this opening scene, and there's a reception. I hope this is not spoiling anything.
Oh no, it should be fine.
Duke Leto and his entourage, including Gurney Halleck. You see this footage in the trailer, receives an emissary from the Emperor of the known universe, who basically is asking Duke Leto to take control of Arrakis. That's where he says to Gurney Halleck, smile, Gurney, and he says, I am smiling. And you see Thufir Hawat, and his eyes kind of roll back in his head. There's sort of a little sound effect because he's a human computer, because computers don't exist in the Dune universe, because AI, artificial intelligence, there was a war, the Butlerian Jihad, that happened, and that got rid of that technology because we realized it was bad for us. Kind of like how we're finding that out now.
Yeah, kind of like how you have Elon Musk is warning about just that.
Exactly.
we really should stop with this whole AI thing, because it's kind of like, I believe he equated it to conjuring demons.
Yeah, it's really frightening when you go down. I've watched a couple documentaries about this, so and the names escape me, Tom, or you'd be able to play that tune. But yeah, so, and I don't want to derail the thumbnail, but yeah, I saw that first 10 minutes, blew my mind. As we get closer to Dune, I'd love to come on and talk about it again. I had the opportunity to interview David Dastmalchian, so I believe next week we're running an interview. He plays Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, he does, and he's also a comic book writer.
He's a comic book writer. The guy is super talented.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on one of these days.
He's in Europe now making a film. So I recorded this podcast like a month ago, and I'm running it next week on the Film Threat YouTube channel if you subscribe. And so we mostly talk about Suicide Squad, but he did tease, and he said he would come on and talk to me about Dune. I'll ask him if he wants to do your show. I'll give him, give your email. I'll give his email.
That would be awesome. Yeah, he looks like an amazing Peter de Vries. He really does.
I got to tell you something about David Dastmalchian. He is a legit nerd. This guy like knows his stuff. You probably first noticed him in The Dark Knight. He is the guy. He was the guy that Batman Harvey Dent is interrogating, and Batman interrupts him. He was in that. He was in Blade Runner 2049. I mean, he's been in like these iconic movies, but he also does a lot of indie movies, and that's how I know him, is from indie film, because he's done a lot of small indie movies you've probably never heard of, and he's great in those films, and that's how I knew him. And then so he's been on my podcast actually several times, but he is like a legit nerd who's kind of living the dream, being in all this. And the fact that like Polka Dot Man is such a big part, I love what James Gunn had to say about Polka Dot Man. He said he wanted to take kind of the dumbest character you could possibly think of and make him cool. So if anybody could do it, James Gunn can do it. But I know I don't want to disappoint people who clicked on the link for the thumbnail.
Yeah, so let's get into the other genuine fanboy who is kind of living the dream. Before that, just to follow up on that other super chat, STR Red Wolf says, beware that if you get addicted to Judge Dredd case files, The latest is case file 37 that dropped this month of the 2000 AD site and app. Yes, indeed. Like if you first get into Judge Dredd, you're in it for the long haul. I will say that. So yeah, of course there's a couple of weak ones, but certainly up to like 14, 15, it's all smooth sailing. But yes, with that, we have more super chats. We're going to get through them all. But right now, let us get into this other fanboy who is living the dream. But he's kind of been a little bit under fire the last year in general, but the last week in particular, ever since the release of Masters of the Universe Revelations. So we are, of course, talking about Kevin Smith. And Chris, you have had professional dealings with Kevin Smith, have you not?
Yeah, I mean, like a quick caveat before I jump into this is, one, I don't really care about He-Man. I missed it. You know, it wasn't part of my Saturday morning. So I was never a big He-Man fan. I kind of saw it for what it was, which for me was like, oh, this is a commercial for toys. So it wasn't part of the Saturday morning that I grew up with in terms of cartoons and whatnot. And I have no, emotional attachment to it whatsoever. And I also happen to know and have known for years Kevin Smith, who, read my magazine Film Threat in the 90s, who, when Mallrats came out, we put Kevin Smith on the cover, a guy who used to write for me, Malcolm Ingram. Some people can look up Malcolm. Really great documentary film. He's evolved into an amazing documentary filmmaker. And I've known Malcolm because I met him at the Toronto Film Festival, and he worked for Film Threat, and that's how we met Kevin Smith, and then became Kevin Smith's bodyguard. And I don't want to tell Malcolm's story. I'll let him tell it for himself. But Malcolm recently directed a documentary about Kevin Smith that's coming out this fall called Clerk, which I've seen. It premiered at South by Southwest. So I know Kevin. I've known him for years, and the one thing I'll say about him, he's a legit honest guy. I mean, he's very honest, which is why I think that what's happening feels more like a betrayal than if it was someone else from Hollywood, right? So there's a couple things, and I think Kevin would be honest about this. He's thin-skinned when it comes to his work. I know that, like, in the past, when Film Threat has given not a bad review but a mixed review to one of his movies, I think if I remember correctly, it was Dogma. He got my number and called me at home he wanted to discuss the review. This is before social media. Couldn't reach out via social media. So this was Dogma. So this was the 90s, and it got kind of a mixed review and kind of questioned some of his choices in it. And he was rattled by it. I mean, it's just, Film Threat. We were a little website at the time, but we'd covered him in the magazine, and he's been nothing but kind and gracious to me. I've been on panels with him at Comic-Con in San Diego, and I've seen his Comic-Con, appearances are a blast. And we were talking before we even started recording that, like, I think there's a little thing in the back of Kevin's mind that, like, look, if this generation that's active on social media now takes a deep dive into my work, into Kevin's work, they're going to see there are plenty of things that he said that could be considered, not by me, but by that crowd, as being problematic. He could be canceled, right? So I think Kevin, in my mind, is one of us, right? He's a legit nerd. He is a geek who sold his comic book collection to fund his first movie, maxed out his credit cards, right? And went to Sundance and somehow sold this film. I'll give you a recommendation. There's a documentary called The Snowball Effect.
Yeah.
It's about how Kevin...
It's actually on the Clerks Blu-ray and DVD.
Yeah, it's on the Clerks Blu-ray, but I remember seeing that, and I'm like, this isn't a DVD extra. This is a movie. I mean,
it is.
Yeah, it's really great. So, and it's inspiring for indie filmmakers. But yeah, so I know, but the guy he's very thin-skinned, and someone, I did not say this, it was in an article, and I don't remember the article. Someone said of Kevin, he's the only celebrity that stalks his own fans. He really wants to do it all. He wants to not just be a filmmaker. He has a comic book store. He's part owner of this bar in Hollywood called Scum and Villainy, where he does his podcast. He does a line of toys. He writes comic books. He, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a guy who does it all. So the fact that this thing that happened a year ago really is surprising to me, because Kevin Smith, to his audience and to everyone else, has been nothing but honest. So the fact that he was caught in this lie and then tried to kind of backpedal about it is really disheartening. And also, so there's two big reasons that I think that this hits harder than any previous, because, oh yeah, some Hollywood douchebag mishandles a franchise like Terminator, whatever. We've started to become numb to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. We all kind of expect that to happen.
Yeah.
And Terminator was already messed up. Like, no one had
Yeah.
any hope for that in the first place. So, like, yeah, fine. So you just humiliate Schwarzenegger a little bit more as you go. And that's really all there was to it. But it was no great loss because it was already destroyed by the 2 previous movies.
Right.
And so Dark Fate, ironically, as I like to say it, that was the final installment of the trilogy of failed Terminator trilogy starters.
that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like they have tried to make like a third Terminator movie 5 times and failed every time.
And every single one of them is like meant to be a trilogy. There was supposed to be the Terminator Salvation trilogy. There was supposed to be the Terminator Sega Genesis trilogy. And then it was supposed to be the Terminator Dark Fate trilogy. And together, the 3 make up a trilogy of failed trilogy starters.
No, to go off your point, Chris, and you're right. Like, Kevin is one of those that normally, even though, in the last few years, he's been more notorious for shilling for things like Star Wars and, Marvel, and crying every time a trailer comes out.
Right.
I've still been one who's stuck up for him. And I think you're on the nose, where this is why this became such a big deal, as opposed to if J.J. Abrams or somebody else who we normally expect, or like you just said, Dark Fate, we had, Tim Miller coming out, oh, this movie's going to scare the hell out of men, and shit like that right off the bat. Unlike those properties like Star Trek and especially Ghostbusters, which is poignant with what we'll talk about here in a bit, if we get to it before you have to go,
right.
Is that those were not hidden. It was up front with their agenda, what they were doing and what they were changing and why. Right. Kevin, on the other hand, with this, from the very start, this has been presented to us as a made for the fans, made for the OG fans. It's supposed to be just like the original Masters. And Kevin, as you pointed out, and as I've pointed out several times, he has notoriously turned down several projects like this in the past for this very reason, because he knows that a big portion of his fan base crosses over with this, and he does not want to piss them off. And he knows how fragile these things are. So what I'm surprised in is how surprised he is by this, because he should fucking know. He has flat out said several times over, and you'll know this too, Chris, because you know him, where he has turned down things like Green Hornet and other movies because he does not want to fuck it up and piss off his fans on top of the original fans of the said property.
Right. This is why I think there, like I say, the 2 reasons are: 1, this is coming from Kevin Smith, the guy that's always been honest with us, honest to a fault, where he has told some humiliating stories about his life.
Superman Lives is a great example. Yeah.
That's his magnum opus right there, more than any of his movies.
The Superman Lives story, the story of Tim Burton, like the story of how he met his wife, and like he is a guy that like is brutally honest to a fault, and has an intimate and personal relationship with his audience. So what he did in the year preceding the premiere of this series, in mischaracterizing it, it feels even more like a betrayal, in addition to we become now used to the emasculation of male characters. I can't imagine. I mean, my son is grown and he's a fully formed adult. I can't imagine what it's like to raise a boy, try to raise a boy into a man at a time when there is almost no new entertainment made for boys.
There really is. I can confirm that. If you just look at all the children's channels, it's all for girls. All of it.
It's all for girls.
The most masculine, manly role model there is for kids growing up right now is Ryder in Paw Patrol. And he's a little soy boy. And that's the closest you're going to get to a masculine role model.
It's just really disheartening, where it gets you thinking in my, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but like, is there an agenda to somehow build basically, and all this entertainment that is being geared towards girls is basically taking masculine attributes and giving them to female characters, which is kind of lazy again, but lazy is kind of what I've come to expect out of Hollywood and the current entertainment industrial complex. But it begins to feel like that there is an agenda that is unspoken to everyone in Hollywood about what's supposed to be happening, that there's an emasculation of men, which is probably an overcorrection for Me Too, and then having come from Kevin. So, and then the third thing is it's a beloved franchise for 2 of the 3 people on this live stream. I am not one of them. So, but it really I really feel bad about this because just to see Kevin, and then Kevin try to backpedal and explain it, but you can see that it bothers him. There was a live stream he did where he was talking about it, and I've seen clips from it. I didn't watch the live stream, but it's just hard. This has to be eating up Kevin. This has to be the bait and switch is not something that fans like, for sure. I mean, and we've gotten used to JJ lying. JJ Abrams lying is like, oh, that guy lies every time. I guess he's doing it because he doesn't want the secrets out. The fact that he said, Benedict Cumberbatch was not Khan was so stupid, and then it was the worst.
It was the worst kept secret ever. It would be better to say nothing.
Terrible.
We all kind of knew that, but like that's the thing with this, and that's what I was getting to with Kevin, and I know you understand where I'm coming from with this whole thing is, he flat out said, well, here you go. Here's the tweet right here. With all due respect to Screen Rant, and this was also in response to Clownfish, I've read the script for our shows, plus wrote a few and viewed 4 amazing animatics. While Tila is present, as she's always been in MOTU Adventures, as she plays a big role in our series, is literally about He-Man.
Yeah, that's a complete and total misrepresentation.
Yeah,
of the
and that's
truth,
the
that's
thing.
being gentle. And also on that note, I just want to bring this up. Neil says for $20, thank you so much. Kevin Smith made a major blunder by baiting and switching fans. When has that ever worked out well for any franchise? Next is a lack of self-awareness. Tells fans to grow up, yet dunked on the prequels / made a career. Yeah, and we'll get into that. I just want to bring it up while we could bring it up. So we'll get into that kind of like double standard between what he now expects of others, as opposed to what he did himself when he was on the other side of the fence. But yes, getting back to this, because as you were saying, what he's like, tweets like this, they do not hold up very well now that we've seen the series. Granted, only the first half of the series, but it's very clearly not about He-Man.
Yeah, it's just a Neil, very astute observation there. It's just it hurts when it comes from Kevin, because it's like, who is everyone just co-opted in Hollywood on this driving this agenda that clearly is not being embraced by the public, and it's not being embraced by the long-term fans of all of this intellectual property, all of these franchises, from Star Wars to Star Trek to He-Man to you name it. The fact that it's like He-Man, they could have made a good He-Man show. I mean, and actually, frankly, I've only seen the trailer for it, and I will say that the animation style is pretty cool. Like,
the animation is amazing. Everyone universally loves the animation. And what I keep on hearing, what we have been saying, is that if they had just trashed their own scripts and they had simply reused the scripts of the 2000X series with this animation, we'd all be in heaven right now.
Yeah, so I don't understand. So I'm surprised that Kevin is surprised about this backlash. And then the Gary Beekler of Nerdrotic brings this up quite a bit. When you go after fans, when you attack the fans, that is like that is the worst thing you could possibly. Who sits around some studio boardroom or some publicist or marketing and going, well, the way to defeat this is to just ostracize the fans that made it popular to begin with. This has been a story that keeps being repeated, and Hollywood keeps making the same mistake, but for Kevin would be the one to finally push back and go, no, I hear you. We kind of screwed up. There's going to be a second season. Trust me.
Thank you.
You're going to get what you want. Like any sort of like, any sort of at least sort of copping to it or being realistic. He blew his opportunity to just be the honest Kevin Smith that we have, grown to love. Like, so I'm, look, I still got to believe, knowing Kevin, that this is eating at him, that he's got to honestly, like, Tom, I still have his old email address. I could pass it along to you. If you, or maybe Gary,
I'll definitely take it. I mean, yeah.
Crazier things would happen because, like I say, he called me at home, like allow him an opportunity to do a mea culpa and just like.
Oh, we'd love to hear from him and hear his side of it.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not going to tell anyone that we got that email address from you, other than the 2,161 who are watching right now.
Well, it's AOL email address.
So but for those very reasons, I think you're right, that he could have just said, look, and I think this is why this happened, Chris. And this is, specifically, you were saying the same thing. Robert said the same thing. And that is that this property, by guys in your age group, which Kevin is in, is seen as nothing but a commercial, and it's not taken as seriously as certain other properties.
Right.
And I think that's the problem. And again, it's, I can understand that coming from that point of view. Is like, it's so much different than what you guys experienced growing up. This was just basically a half-hour TV advert to you guys.
Yeah, I think that's half the problem. Half the problem is that he's kind of the wrong age group.
And then the other problem is
he was to age, so to him it's basically just a toy commercial. He just doesn't have any inclination of what this thing actually means to those just a few years younger. You had exactly the same thing from our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett, who also said in his stream that He-Man has no artistic merit. It's just a toy commercial, and that's a fair point of view because that is how it started. But what I think that both our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett, so absolutely all due respect to him, love the guy, but he's missing this one point, and so does Kevin Smith. It's not about the toys. The toys were the beginning, but the whole franchise took a life of its own because of Filmation. Because what Lou Scheimer at Filmation did is that he took a really hokey, stupid concept that was dreamt up by men in the advertising and toy industry that was just having a laugh. They were out, they were drinking alcohol, and much heavier stuff than that as well. They were just having a laugh. They were like playing a game of, can you top this? They did various copyright infringements and stuff like that, and they cobbled together Masters of the Universe. Really, really hokey stuff. They didn't have a story or anything. But then Lou Scheimer came, and what he did was that he breathed life into it. And that life is something that will hold up. Like many people, if they go back and they watch that Filmation cartoon, not every single episode, because there were 130 of them, plus 93, I believe, She-Ra episodes. But if you go and you watch like the best of those episodes, that writing holds up today. That writing is better than anything that Kevin Smith and his team came up with. They said that they wanted to add more depth. No, they didn't. Actually, there was more depth in the writing in that cartoon at its best. That cartoon was magic. And most people, Kevin Smith's age, don't know because they didn't really see it. And we saw this in this interview, not interview actually, but this video that Kevin Smith put up on his own channel, which I thought was very interesting, and that formed the basis for the most recent editorial, where he basically said that he wasn't worried about the fan response at all, because he had two super fans. He had, like, I always forget the guy's name, the guy from Mattel, so he's one. And then it's Ted
Biaselli.
Thank you, Rob David. And Rob David, from everything that I can see, is a good guy, and he's a great writer. He's done some amazing things in the DC comics and stuff like that. So I'm not so worried about him per se. But then there's Ted Biaselli in Netflix. He's the bill payer of this whole thing. And he presented himself as a super fan of the property. And I do not doubt for a second that he is a fan. But as I pointed out in that editorial, he does not speak for the rest of the fan base, because there are things in his personality and his life and everything that makes him atypical from everyone else. So when we get like his fan, or basically like, I think what we're seeing is actually more Ted Biaselli's vision than it is Kevin Smith's vision. I don't think that Kevin Smith ever said that, oh, we're going to completely bypass He-Man. I think it was like a really good idea from canon. Here you have Teela's story. It was set up in the Filmation series. But then I think that Ted Biaselli came in, and that's where you can talk about agenda, if you so wish. And then he was like, because this is something Kevin Smith said, he was like, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do that? It wasn't Kevin Smith who said that. It was Ted Biaselli. And he was like, yeah, sure. And the way that he described it, to me, sounded like groupthink. There you have one person who claims to speak for all the fans. So in this sense, he acts as a creative consultant at the same time that he's the network representative, and he's the one that therefore ultimately pays the bills and the one that decides if the series happens at all. That's the perfect recipe for groupthink. And I don't think that there were anyone else there that were strong enough to challenge him and offer any kind of resistance. Kevin Smith certainly wasn't. Because you heard him, what he was very clear was, he was of the opinion that if Ted Biaselli wants it and he's a super fan, all the fans are going to love it. And that, I think, was a critical mistake. There, maybe Kevin Smith needed to do more research on his own to be able to provide some kind of resistance. Because based on Kevin Smith's answer session on his own channel, I did not see any kind of resistance offered to Biaselli's ideas.
Yeah, I guess.
And now learning more about him and seeing the show, I think I have an idea of what he wanted.
Well, those are two comments. One, again, I cannot think of a franchise or a piece of intellectual property where people in the boardroom who do the marketing and the creative are thinking, how do we get boys to love Barbie? Like, how do we get boys to love My Little Pony? How do we get boys to love Bratz? No one says that. Not one. There's not one example that you can give. However, there's been this concerted effort to go, how do we get women and girls to like this franchise? Insert any current modern franchise. How do we get girls and women to like this franchise that's traditionally been for boys? And then how do we emasculate all the male characters in this? It's become now like, it's been like, for me, like a slow burn. I'm like the frog in the frying pan. I'm like, oh, there's just a couple things here and there. Okay, I guess that's cool. Not that they ever noticed that there have been strong female lead characters in these franchises all along, that they never noticed, like Princess.
And there was, because Kevin Smith, he even said that, well, Masters was always woke, which no, it wasn't, but it was always humanist. It was always egalitarian. It always had extremely strong female representation. So it just continued what was already set up, which is why I'm saying the Filmation series, that was magic in a way that I don't think that many older than Tom and myself necessarily appreciates.
Well, when it comes to Filmation, I was more of a Flash Gordon fan. It was actually when I was a kid, it was kind of a sexy show. It hit me right at the right age. It was Flash Gordon with Ming the Merciless and whatnot. It was, based on the old like Buster Crabbe series. Some of the designs were from that, and that series was awesome. Like that was my Filmation, was Flash Gordon, right? But the toy line for that was not so great. But that was where but I feel like if they had ended season 1 with killing He-Man and Skeletor, you know, like that both of those characters died. That was the end of season 1, kind of setting up a season 2. There'd be a very different conversation if it was a traditional, like, tell the story, the He-Man stories that people want to see. It would have been a different, we'd be having a different conversation. I'm surprised because of all the people in Hollywood, the guy that we have come to trust over decades because of his films and his podcasts and work all over the place. I almost wish Kevin would like just take a rest. Like, dude, not every waking moment of your day has to be doing something. You can, you know, relax a bit, go to the, you know, whatever. But you know, I don't get it. That's why I think that this reaction to this has been as strong as it's been, is because Kevin was the guy that you could not compromise, you know, that couldn't be compromised. And so to see this happen to him of all people, and then the same stuff we've come to expect. I mean, if J.J. Abrams did this, no one would bat an eye. And J.J. Abrams, we've just become used to him like BSing about everything.
Oh, it's completely expected. I mean, I don't think anyone is looking forward to his Dark Justice League or Justice League Dark, where he's already promised that forget all about getting John Constantine that's faithful to the source material. Not only that, they're going to fire Matt Ryan because he reminds everyone of what Constantine is supposed to be like.
No, J.J. Abrams, you destroy the most beloved franchises, loved by almost everyone worldwide. You're able to, you know, we live at a time now where it's like there's so much of pop culture and things are these sort of, you know, little slices of the pie, but Star Wars appealed to everybody. Star Wars appealed to young, old, cross-gender. It doesn't matter who you were. You can find something to love in Star Wars. The fact that J.J. Abrams destroyed that franchise, he's the one that destroyed it. I know, I feel like everybody wants to give Rian Johnson a lot of, he doesn't deserve all the credit. It's J.J. Abrams that destroyed it with that first movie, and the third movie just, in my opinion, shit the bed. And
to be fair, it was a joint effort. It wasn't just JJ. I mean, he was hired to do a job, and then you can like argue about exactly how
it's kind of similar to Kevin Smith. Actually,
you had other people working very hard to make a complete mess out of that as well. So yeah, it was a joint effort.
It's kind of similar to Kevin Smith in that respect, and I'm not making excuses for either one of them, but really it is. You got two guys who were not fans of the franchise, who had other people that they trusted to do such things for them, and that's where, you know, JJ relied on Kurtzman and Orsi, and Orsi was the only real fan in the mix. And then the same thing with Kevin here. He was relying on Rob David and Ted Biaselli, but Biaselli's choices trumped everybody else's. And Kevin, he flat out admitted he was there to just make Ted happy, and which is a recipe for disaster, as Andre put it. And I think it's very true, because Ted is only one fan. You need to listen to a group of fans when it comes to this thing. And that's something that we've learned, you know, time and time again. Now, maybe the thing is, where I've said is, like, we've kind of gotten to this debate. Well, is this show actually woke? And you said you haven't seen it yourself, Chris, yet.
I haven't.
But I will say the show itself is not woke, but it has woke elements injected into it.
Exactly. Very much.
Especially
so.
The problem you have is Tila, and this is where I think Robert and I have kind of had a few conversations where I'm not sure he understands, and it's simply because he doesn't understand the property yet, as he's learning more things about it. And it's like, yeah, we're trying to tell you is that Tila has a story to be told. It's not this, and this is not Tila, right? Like that's the fundamental problem you have here. And the rest of the show is, for the most part, fine. Some of the characters not quite there, but you have this instance where all he had to do was be 25% different than the Filmation series, pretty much, to borrow one of our old terms. And what he's done and given us is something that's 75% different, not by looks, but by characterizations. It's like, it looks great, but it's not what we ordered, right? Like, It may look right on the surface, but it's definitely not right on the inside. He missed all kinds of problems.
I'll take it even further.
Yeah, go ahead.
It looks right. The animation is fantastic. But honestly, in terms of both writing and characterization, of all the He-Man installments there has ever been, this is the weakest. I've seen like all of like this press saying that they added more depth. No, they didn't. They actually took it away.
Yeah, they turned her into LGBT law.
No, more than that. More than that. Yeah, not only that. What they did was, and this was the high crime. They turned Tila, who was always a strong, fierce warrior, independent woman, but at the same time a soulful woman. Loyal to her friends, everything like that. She was like the fantasy of many boys growing up, in addition to some gals, because she was genuinely a role model. They took all of that and they made her one of the most unlikable, pardon my French, bitches ever put on a screen. Because that's exactly what they did. They made her so completely and utterly unlikable. They made her evil. I mean, the other strong female here is Evil Lynn. She's basically Skeletor's woman. And she's more likable and more sympathetic than Tila. Then they failed miserably when no one can stand the lead character because she's just so unlikable. And that's a result of not the character being woke per se, but woke influences going into the writing decisions.
I think that there's a way to handle. I mean, there's a way to handle wokeness that is a conversation and not pushing an agenda. There's a show on HBO. It's HBO Max called Hacks. Have you seen that? It's basically it's Jean Smart basically playing Joan Rivers. And her career is kind of on the wane, and she's does a regular show in Vegas, and she is being told she has to kind of modernize and update her act. And she hires this millennial writer out of Hollywood who's a lesbian, who comes out, and you see the culture clash between, like, she's very woke in all of her stuff, and the woman who's Jean Smart plays, this comedian, totally dresses her down and pushes back, and it's great. It's great. In the same way that Cobra Kai, like, will have wokeness is kind of in it. It's not called that, but it's called out. And there's a conversation that doesn't necessarily make either group wrong.
I disagree. There's no wokeness whatsoever in Cobra Kai.
No, well, but what I'm saying is
none whatsoever.
Well, I don't think that there is, in terms of like the characters or the show. The show is definitely not woke.
Then it's not woke. I mean, what you have natural diversity. You have the same kind of diversity you have there, and you have the strong kind of characters. This is exactly what you would have 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You simply have really good storytelling and compelling characters with a diverse set of characters. But to me, that doesn't make it woke in any way, shape, or form. Woke isn't that you have representation. Being the key hallmark of woke is that it highlights the merits of one group by actively degrading and shitting on another. That's what wokeness is. And there's none of that in Cobra Kai.
Well, I will just say that when any sort of woke thing is brought up, it's kind of shot down and mocked. And I always find that entertaining when that comes up in the show. So I'm looking.
I agree with that, because that's what they do. They take those tropes and they mock them. Yes, right. I agree completely. And Johnny Lawrence is like, he's the hero that we all need.
I love him. He's so
great. Because like,
yeah,
like you could take your asthma and like have that somewhere else. You're not the asthmatic in here, and like you're on the spectrum. Well, get off it.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, this is a fighting that your sissy ass generation desperately needs. So yeah, I agree. Like that's taking fun of all the tropes that otherwise in series like, for instance, this one, are treated seriously to the detriment of the series. Well, Cobra Kai doesn't do that, and that's a huge plus, and it makes the series all the better.
I just think that if Kevin had the opportunity to speak on, say, a show like yours, or speak actually, and it would not be unusual for Kevin to actually reach out and do that. He's been having these conversations in a safe space with people who are around him, who just agree with everything he says and or safe spaces. He should talk to the fans, because I cannot believe that Kevin will be able to do anything publicly in the future, whether it's San Diego Comic-Con or whatever, without addressing this or having fans present who are unhappy with this, because it gets the mind thinking, like, is there an agenda in Hollywood to diminish masculinity? And I would say that there's enough evidence now. I didn't believe it when people like yourself, Tom, and Gary Beekler and Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, when people like that were noticing it way before I noticed it. You know, like I say, I'm like a frog in a frying pan, because so much of what I cover at Film Threat is woke, right? Like but it's not intended for a broad audience. You know, these are small documentaries, small indie movies intended for small audiences that generally agree with the ideas being espoused. And those films have a right to exist. They've been around forever. They're called indie films. They're tiny movies.
Well, if I can defend them for a moment, I'll just say that's what I've always said, is I wouldn't even consider those necessarily woke, as they are movies with a message. See, that's the difference, and that's what I've said. And, you know, when Leslie Headland come out there and said, I want to make a Star Wars story that's written by a black person and directed by a black person and told from the black point of view and all these kind of things, it's like, that's wonderful, Leslie, but I can point you to 5 or 6 black writers that I know right now who have a dozen scripts from the black point of view that nobody wants to touch because they're not called Star Wars. Right. And those are the movies you're talking about, Chris, you know, and that's fine. And that's what we've said. There are a place for stories like that. Milk, all these other movies that have come out in the past that are generally known as Oscar bait, because they tend to tackle social issues. But that's not what Star Wars is about. That's not what He-Man is necessarily about. That's not what Star Trek are all about.
There's an element to it, but that element isn't in the forefront as it is here, especially not when intermixed with trying to push an agenda, which seems to be the case. And that's the real thing. And also, I liked what you said about like him being more isolated. And it goes back to what I was saying, that, yeah, I think he was absolutely isolated, and he was isolated with the wrong person in Ted Biaselli. There he had someone with very strong ideas, and they really needed to maybe check with others, like do some kind of like just does this pass the smell test? Are He-Man fans really going to enjoy He-Man being killed off in the first episode, and from there on out we're dealing with the She-Ra show, Teela show? And again, this is just the first half of season 1. We don't know what's going to happen in season 2, but I do not think that fans are going to be much more receptive to it based on what has been so far. And I'm sure that if it had been that much better, Kevin Smith would have come out and give some kind of indication that, oh, this is still going to be all the show that you... No, he genuinely thought people were going to love this. I think he genuinely believed
I actually
that people were going to be responsive.
Right here that he does not clearly understand the franchise, thanks to Thundercats Hall for pointing me to this. But here he talks about the 2 ladies that are the show is about, that he claims it wasn't about in the first place, and how he viewed them.
But also because he mirrored Teela's journey with Evelyn's journey as well. You're talking about 2 women who have been in the shadows of very powerful male characters since the inception of the franchise.
Which is not true.
No, that's a complete misunderstanding.
Side by side with He-Man, definitely more of his equal.
That Evelyn, he's right about.
Was always Skeletor,
and he's wrong there. Totally wrong there. Maybe
wrong.
Maybe on the surface level, but as you and I both pointed out, that was one of the big problems we had with the show. Unless Evelyn's fucking with Skeletor at the end there, she would not just do that. Like, that is not in her character. She would stab him in the back before she would do that.
Yeah. I mean, there have been so many instances in all parts of He-Man canon, especially the Filmation series, which goes to show that Evelyn really is the more intelligent. She is just like in Chris, like in Star Trek, how it was revealed in Enterprise that it's on Orion, the Orion slave girls. They're not really the slaves. It's the men who are the slaves, and the women are really in charge. It's kind of like that with Evelyn as well. I mean, she may let Skeletor think that he's in charge, but really, she's the one in charge. And also, I mean, this is even in the comics, which is from just a few years ago, where the Skeletor flat out states that he has to be on good terms with Evelyn, because she is as powerful as him, maybe even more. And he doesn't know that in a matchup between the two, that would be quite the challenge. And he isn't sure that he would come out on top, which is why he always wants to keep her on his side. So Kevin Smith saying that, that's just, he has fundamentally not understood the dynamics between these characters.
Well, as a whole, because that's what I pointed out. If you really break it down, the two most powerful characters in He-Man aren't He-Man and Skeletor. They're Evil Lyn and the Sorceress.
Yeah, exactly. And Teela is the sorcerer to be. Like, she's destined to be the next sorcerer. So in that sense, the most powerful on the show, the three most powerful are Evil Lyn, the sorceress, and the sorceress in the making, Teela. And this was always there. And Kevin Smith got parts of it. It has obviously been relayed to him, but not all the details.
Right.
And like, this is part of the reason why so many are so disappointed and feel that the writing was actually stronger in the Filmation series for kids.
Because there's another thing,
which was made for adults.
He's missing, because the whole dynamic between Evil Lyn carries farther than that. Is like, Skeletor, as bad as he isn't the worst thing. Like, it's kind of like the Loki thing that not to spoil that, but like, yeah, it's like Skeletor's kind of keeping off worse things, right? Like, he's bad enough that, you know, he's got his deal with Hordak to keep the Horde off the planet. He's the one keeping all the other bad guys from taking over the planet.
Skeletor is the devil, you know.
Exactly. Skeletor is the devil, you know, and Evil Lyn is the one who will stab him in the back. So like, that's where, you know, that's right.
And actually, she did that. I mean, that was a plot point in the 2000 series. She was the one that was that basically brought about the Snake Man, the devil that you didn't know, which were worse than Skeletor. And like, the end of it was basically resumed to normality when Skeletor finally was able to regain the upper hand, and everyone was better off. And had the series continued, Evil Lyn would have been the one to bring back Hordak.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Chris, like, I don't blame you for not getting all of these things.
There's a whole lore.
But Kevin Smith really should have, because he was the showrunner, and this is part of the reason why this series is so disappointing on so many levels, because he said that this was a show that was made for the fans. Well, the fans aren't pleased because it failed on so many levels other than the visual. And one thing that really annoyed me was that they made Skeletor an incel. Because one thing that is like, he tells Teela's lover that, look at my face. This face has made me a lonely man, because no one would have me as a man because I'm so ugly. Boo-hoo sob story. That's also completely out of character. I mean, he's the lover of Evil Lyn. So, yeah. And
now that we put Chris to sleep.
Yeah, no, I love the passion. Like, I feel like this is the kind of passion that should have been a part of the show. That's why.
Exactly. And it could have been so easily.
Yeah,
they just needed to, if he didn't understand it, like, I just wish that he would have reached out to a couple of more guys other than Ted Biaselli that would have been able to steer him right, and it wouldn't have been difficult at all. And I can just say this, like, for instance, with me, like, Star Wars, that was like, I didn't grow up a fan of Star Wars. What happened with that, like, it pains me intellectually, but it didn't hit me emotionally. Star Trek was much, much worse, because that means more to me, but I've gotten it over it now. But He-Man, that hit me really bad, and that wound is fresh.
Yeah, I mean, he went and took Man-at-Arms and made him not so Man-at-Arms. He made her LGBT not so Evil Lyn, and in Skeletor. So And then he killed He-Man twice. Well, technically we know he's not dead the second time, but we already kind of know what's going into the second half of the season, and that's been the big question to everybody. And Andre and I have had a bit of debate about it too, is like, who's going to come back? I feel like he last Jedi'd the crowd with this. Like, at this point, I know so many people are just like, I'm not interested. I'm not coming back. We already kind of know that a lot of it's going to be, you know, Adam recovering, Tila finally realizing who she's supposed to be, and Adam kind of already projected what's supposed to happen in one scene where he's talking to her. He basically says, you can fix all of this. You can bring the magic back to eternity and make everything right again. And that's basically kind of projecting what's going to end up happening probably, you know? So like, right. I feel like it's just going to get to the end and she's going to reset it all, which sets it up for a second season that Kevin's already been promised. And that's just going to basically be kind
of... Has he been promised a season 2?
I believe they signed it up for 2 seasons right off the bat. And that's typical of Netflix. They usually sign anywhere from 3 to 5 season deals.
Yeah.
And it would line up also, 2 seasons would also line up with the rights issue with Mattel.
Wow.
Because for those who don't know the short version, Mattel loses the rights to He-Man in less than a year and a half.
Well, I will say this, knowing Kevin, this is not going away. I don't think this is going away because, again, I think this is bigger than previous situations in which fans have felt betrayed by Hollywood. It's just, we get it. We're so used to it now. It's like a battered wife syndrome. You know what I mean? It's just like, we're used to it. It's like we're used to the franchises being screwed up. Star Trek, Star Wars, DC Universe, Marvel Universe, like we are used to this now. But the one guy that we thought we could count on, this betrayal, it hits too close to home. It's like, is no one above being compromised? Is you know what I mean? Like, and so that's why I think that this backlash is not going to go away quietly. And I feel like it's going to eat at Kevin in a way that he's got to address it more directly, right? Like,
I would say so, because he's tried to address it, but honestly, here's like the problem. Like everything that he has tried to say has made it infinitely worse. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes he ever did, certainly in terms of like PR and stuff like that, was the moment that Clownfish put out like their story. He responded, and he shouldn't have. That was the first big thing, because then he set up that he went against a YouTube channel that at the time was fairly small, and that was very genuinely He-Man fans. And he kind of like, he says that he wasn't mean to them, but he kind of was. But at the same time, he only validated what they were saying, because no one bought into that corporate denial that he tried to put there. I remember that very clearly, because everyone was like, oh shit, this is true. He just confirmed it. Or he meant to deny it. But everyone saw through that corporate denial. And those that didn't were told in no uncertain terms that this is a corporate denial. Well, by the likes of Gary, ourselves, and others. So, and that moment is like when the bad PR started. Of course, it would have happened anyway, because it fundamentally wasn't the show that it would have been. If everyone had been really excited for this, and then this would have come, I think the response would have been even worse, because this way people at least were braced for the worst, and then it turned out to be worse than anticipated. And you can argue, like, would that have been better or worse? I don't know, but basically it was a mistake on his end, because it made him look bad. And every subsequent thing that he has said on the matter has made things worse. Because then he put out all of these denials, and then later, since it was all true, he had to try to quibble those denials, saying like, no, I didn't actually lie, because in a way it was true, because, and then like his excuses are even like worse than the original thing. And then he put out this Q&A session on his channel, and then there was like this town hall with the voice actor from Orko, where he like also tried to explain himself. and I kind of like understand that he's like trying to make things better, trying to save his image. But things being what they are, and the series being what there really is nothing you can say to make it better. The only thing you can say is making it worse. Like the right thing to say here is that, yeah, it looks like we messed up a little bit, but we can try to course correct in season 2.
Right.
There really is nothing else to say in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, I do think it would mean something if Kevin actually. See, I don't understand this because maybe I just come from a different. Kevin's Gen X, isn't he? He's definitely got Gen X.
He's 51 and like a
month. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a little older than him, but yeah, no, I'm Gen X, and look, someone has a problem with me, I just confront it. Oh, you got a well, let's and I'll look and look. If you at least listen, you go, I kind of hear where you're coming from, and I've changed my position. I've changed my position on a bunch of things. I mean, especially when it comes to movie reviews. Sometimes you review a movie in the heat of the moment, you feel a certain way, and then 10 years later you feel differently. Either on the positive side, a movie ages better or ages worse. I would say that the Star Wars prequels have aged better. I mean, looking back on them, it's like, oh wow, there was a plan. Maybe it wasn't there was at least some kind of plan, right? I think the Star Wars sequels are going to age poorly. And I'm the eternal optimist. I think I even sent that to you, Tom, that what my theory of what was going to happen in the third Star Wars sequel in Rise of Skywalker. I had this theory about what was going to happen. And I thought, I think I figured it out, that this is going to be brilliant. And of course it was terrible, but the prequel trilogy, I believe, has aged better. If you ask people, initially it was so different than the original Star Wars films. And maybe that's what makes it good, is that there are aspects of it that are kind of, I mean, it explains how the universe got to where it was. It explained how something spirals into fascism. It's not from people who are evil on the surface. It's from people who are kind. Senator Palpatine in the first movie is the nicest guy you would ever meet. He's this nice old man, and then spiraled into an authoritarian dictatorship. That. Those things happen slowly. They don't happen like with one act, right? And I think that that's what the Star Wars prequels were trying to show us, how this can happen in a democracy. So I feel like the Star Wars prequels resonate more today than they did when they first came out. And if you know anything about George Lucas, I know both of you here know a lot. It's he was a student of history. He loved history. And so he and patterns. And so I think maybe a lot of what he was trying to say in the Star Wars prequels was a warning in some sense, in the form of something mainstream entertainment. So I don't think this, so whatever, here we are. Kevin, I wish you would come out and actually more directly address it rather than be on the defensive about his work. But as I said, having known him for years, something I can tell you is that Kevin is very thin-skinned especially when it comes to his work, which are, his babies in a sense, right? And I think that it's also different because, and you'll both relate to this, I'm a father to a son. And so, but I'm also a father to a daughter, and they're very different. Each has very different needs. It's very different experiences raising a daughter and raising a son. And it gives you a whole different perspective on parenting. And I think that Kevin he has a daughter, of course, named Harley after Harley Quinn. And that gives him a different perspective on the world. Is there anyone in Hollywood that is even thinking about entertainment for young boys and what might appeal to them and only them? Not trying to you don't have to appeal to everybody, right? But there are quite a few regular boys that, play sports and get dirty and break their toys and do normal stuff that boys do. And I fear that there's nothing for them. Not even a show called fucking He-Man. And there's my rant. You get at least a couple per show, I guess. That's one.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 110%.
Sorry, everybody.
No, don't be sorry at all.
No, absolutely.
Not at
Ranting
all.
is quite okay here.
No, and you're spot on, and I there's not much I can add to it other than, like I do believe we kind of just hit the nail on the head already with Kevin. And
Right.
I mean, if he wants to speak out to the fans, Midnight's Edge is one of the most neutral places to do it, because I'm sure if he went on like Friday Night Tights or something, feel like he's getting bombarded, and a lot of the other
probably
places
would by the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not just the chat, but even people in the group. Like,
Right, true.
At least here he's got at least a somewhat former fan. And
we had Ken Penders on.
Yeah. We've always given everybody, and people, I know they probably wouldn't believe this, but if Ryan Johnson or anybody else come to us and said they wanted to speak their piece, we would give them their piece, and we would not be rude to them. I mean, that's not what we're about, Well,
at least not too rude.
Not too rude at first, but anyhow, but yeah.
But no promises that there wouldn't be tough questions.
Yeah, there should
be
there's a difference between tough questions and being rude.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I would tune in for that. I would tune in for that for sure. If you got Kevin on the show, would be awesome. And I don't understand why he hasn't done that. I mean, previously he's had a contentious relationship with the press. I will say that he does not trust film critics. And like I said, he's had sort of a mixed, while I've known him and he's been kind to me, he's also been someone who feels perfectly entitled to reach out if he doesn't like something that I've said, which is fine. I'll have the conversation, but I stand by my writers and I stand by their opinions and their right to express their opinions. And that's just sort of par for the course. You're in that position and you're going to put stuff out there. People are going to discuss it. So again, I just think it hits so hard because it's him. It's not J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy or someone that we've kind of come to expect that they're going to make poor choices. So God.
No, that's exactly it right there. I mean, you're hitting all the nails on the head, and that's a lot of the stuff that I've been saying the last few days. And I really think we'll have to wait and see how the second half goes and how they handle it. And it's not like this is the only He-Man thing we got on the horizon either. We've got the CGI series coming up. They're still trying to get that movie made, so we'll see how that works out. But we should get to some of these super chats before we get too deep into the show, because we got some Ghostbusters stuff to talk
Dale
about.
says for $20, Evelyn wasn't more powerful than Skeletor. Skeletor destroyed her in 2000X when she betrayed him. In Filmation, she feared him. Evelyn is his equal, but not more powerful. Skeletor and Evelyn equals Morgoth and Sauron. That's what I think. That's kind of equals. About the same level of power, which is why Skeletor also fears her, because he knows that if Evelyn doesn't hold back, he cannot be certain that he's going to win that competition. And then I'm going to bring up some more super chats we can get up on screen here. So we haven't forgotten those that came before. We just haven't gotten to them yet. We will. Thomas Plummer says for $10, if nothing else, I wish he, meaning Kevin, would watch your Wake stream. The genuine heartbreak in Mexican Iron Man's voice was heartbreaking on its own, and Andre's perspective was enlightening. Yes, and Chris, if you wonder, this is like the stream that we did after having seen the entire series. We did like an hour-long Wake stream where we basically just shared our feelings because we were also heartbroken by what we had witnessed. It was Kevin Smith did not do great on this one. Let's just put it that way. And Mark Sokolsky says for 50 Swedish krona, my anger is solely due to Kevin's mistreatment of Clownfish TV. I'm only disappointed by what he did with the show. So yeah, angry for the public reaction and disappointed by the show. That's one way to do it.
Well, it'd be so much easier to dismiss the show if it was real shitty, right? Like if it was just this crappy thing that you could just say, well, it's just junk, just like, Star Trek Discovery and stuff like that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of good stuff here. And, Script and I and a few other people have talked about how you could have done this same exact story infinitely better. And the biggest problem is Tila. It's her characterization, her choices, the way she reacts and acts throughout the story that basically destroy the entire thing. Because otherwise it could have been great. Don't everybody talk at once.
Yeah, no, actually, well, I don't expect like Chris to have too much to say to it because you haven't seen it.
No.
But yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. Let's.
But Mark is right here. Mark is like, I don't understand the going after fans. Like, I made this analogy. I've made this analogy before, not original thought, but Domino's Pizza did an entire campaign where they said, we admit it, our pizza's bad. Like, our pizza is bad. We need to fix it. And they relaunched their pizza with better ingredients and better. You can look up the commercials. This was years ago.
Yeah, it was like 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
I don't understand why, say, if a restaurant said, Tom, you're dumb. You don't even know hamburgers, Tom. What do you know about burgers? Like, what restaurant would say that? You either like In-N-Out burgers or Five Guys or whatever, or you don't. And I mean, look, I've had the bad experiences with restaurants. What do? I'm so sorry. And then they try to resolve the issue by remaking, whatever food item or whatever. And so I don't understand that there's not that same kind of in this. Like, why would you go after the fans? I don't understand that. Like, who thinks that this is a good strategy? I think that this is terrible, and we've seen it over and over. So what Mark is saying is right. Like Kevin, he could even apologize and just say, "Look, I was just trying to keep the show secret." I don't know how that leaked out, right? Like, but whatever. I just again, coming from Kevin, I think this is like a gut punch. So. Yeah.
Well, that's a big part of it. Exactly. I mean, and the thing with him going after Clownfish, to go back to the super chat, was it's kind of like the Mangold effect, right? Like, and I've said this before, is Mangold didn't have to go after Matt Kadish on the whole Indiana Jones thing. He could have just left it alone. And at that point, all his movie had to do was be better than Crystal Skull. Didn't have to be good as the Spielberg movies, just had to be better than the last one for us to go, okay, we got that over with and out of the way, right? Like, at least Mangold didn't fuck it up. Now that he went after Matt Kadish, his Indiana Jones movie has to be as good as the original. And what we're seeing play out right now with Kevin Smith is proof of that, because now that he went out after Clownfish, he set himself up for failure, right? Because on the other end of this, if he had just kept his mouth shut, we could have at least went on the other side of this. And the worst thing we'd be griping about is Tila's character choices, probably. And I think we'd be a little bit more lenient with the show. And we probably wouldn't be so focused on Kevin, and we'd be more focused on Ted Biaselli and Netflix and the type of shit they normally do. Because let's face it, they're notorious for fucking things up. And everybody is rightfully so, worried about Conan, but we have to be the ones to go, no, calm down. We know Conan's okay because they have Frederick Malmberg in charge, and he's not going to let this shit happen. But Frederick Malmberger is not Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith does not care about most Masters of the Universe, and he's already proven that to us. And that was his biggest mistake. And that takes me back to my initial point, is why he shouldn't have done this in the first place, because he knew this was a possibility. Even if he knocked it out the park, he still should have known this could have happened. And now he's put himself in a position where the other big question is, Chris, I got to ask you, how do you think this is going to affect Clerks 3? Because he just pissed off a big portion of his fan base that was already teetering away from him because of his shilling and crying constantly. Now that he's a sellout, what do we do?
Well, I'm going to guess, because he hasn't started shooting yet. It's just, they did the script read. I saw those pics. I think that it'll be addressed in some small way that'll be offhand. It's definitely, there's going to be something in the movie, at least something shot. Who knows if it'll make it in the final cut? It definitely will affect it. I'm looking forward to Clerks 3. I mean, this is sort of unprecedented. But Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is probably my favorite because it's just so inside baseball. Jay and Silent Bob reboot, I loved. I went and I saw it in the theater as it was like one of those like one-day screening things where you had to be there and there was all this extra material. And it just, Kevin, if he does anything, he makes fun of himself. And while he may not address it necessarily in Clerks 3, if there's time, I'm sure it'll be addressed. It'll be addressed in season 2. I just don't know why they why didn't they just do the cliffhanger of He-Man dying in the final episode of season 1 and then obviously coming back in season 2? I mean, if we know anything about fiction, no one's ever really gone, right? Like, I mean, Spock dies and then comes back in the next movie, and then they ruin, big spoiler in the title of the movie.
And there's even question of whether or not he couldn't technically even really permanently kill some of these characters due to the licensing. But like, you're right. Like, I agree with you, but that was been one of his excuses, or one of the things he's tried to fall back on, is that they split it up without him knowing it. And really, he could have just he's already thrown Netflix under the bus enough. He could have just done that to begin with instead of going after the fans anyway, and just been like, look, kids, I know you don't get it. It's cut in half. I didn't plan for you to see it that way, but just be patient. When you see the rest of it, you'll know what it's all about, and that at least I could have understood. But anyhow.
Yeah, I don't know that he expected this reaction. And then he said that Netflix thought it was a good thing because people are talking about it. I don't know if that's necessarily
I don't know that that's 100% accurate.
Exactly.
To me, that sounded more like something that he put out to protect himself.
That sounds like something more like an agent would tell him, or a manager.
Yeah, that sounds more like agent talk. I'm not 100%
because he re-explained
certain.
it again, and he's like, well, the way I see it is like, sure, we've got about 5,000-10,000 pissed off fans, but over 200,000 people are watching it and they're loving it. So if it's just a little minute portion that are upset, well, fuck them, they need to grow up. That's pretty much the way he's saying it. Yeah,
I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that there's a minutia of people that are disliking it. I think that there's a minutia of people that actually are liking it.
Yeah, and I think he's not realizing how big of an audience he has right now. Like, this
or
is
how big an audience He-Man has, and how
that's what I'm saying. Like, we even
disappointed because I've heard a couple of people that do like it, and when I say a couple, I do mean literally a couple. That couple being Alejandro Marin that we had here earlier in the chat, and Matt Kadish. Those are the two I know that liked it. They're literally only ones. And everyone else, and then I'm including people I know in my own personal life, no one liked this. And if you look at like the reactors on YouTube and stuff like that, even people that are usually quite forgiving, no one liked this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could probably pull off a Kevin Smith impression because I've been listening to him talk for 30 years.
Do it, man.
I just did my, kind of, sort of, but like, no, like, I mean, people don't understand like how, I mean, I've been getting kind of bombarded with, oh, you're just being a fucking man baby over a show, a commercial or cartoon for kids and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you guys don't understand. This intersected for me personally in a way like nothing else has. The reason I know who Robert Meyer Burnett and you guys are is because of Kevin Smith. The reason I'm doing, at least one of the big reasons I'm doing what I'm doing right now, is because of Kevin Smith. Right. So there's that. And then He-Man is one of my number one properties. Like, I've told the story many times. I went from He-Man to Ghostbusters to Ninja Turtles. That was my 80s. That was my childhood. Right. Like, those were my three big things. Sure, Star Wars, Superman, all that stuff was always kind of there, but like, those were the things that I like keyed in on and were my go-to for my childhood. And there was other things that broke it up in between, like Batman and Roger Rabbit and stuff. But my point still being, MOTU was a big deal for me. And so was Kevin Smith for 30 years. He was my gateway into independent film, geek culture in a way, because when I was growing up, I was in a rural area, so there wasn't a lot of geeks like me, right? Like I was one of the outcasts. There was only like one or two other guys like me that were into this kind of stuff. So when I found this community, and Kevin Smith was one of those, because that was, like you said, before social media, it was because of the News Askew website that I kind of first found like a community on the internet. And so a lot of this really does affect me. I almost feel like I know Kevin personally, even though I've never met him, never talked to him directly that I know of. I may have interacted with him on the message boards and not realized it, but you know, because I know he's gone on there as himself and incognito. So like, again, I know you know him personally. So like, to me, I hear this from not just you, but other people who know him personally. It's like, he's changed. This is not him. They don't understand why he's doing this. The reactions you're saying, you understand some of them because this is how he's reacted to you in the past. But the way he's treating the fans, though, is the one thing that sticks out most to everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's just so surprising to me. This is it's just really surprising, this coming from him. And that's why I think one, this is not going away, and two, he's got to address it in a meaningful way. He's been addressing it in a selfish way, which is being defensive. You know, he's not addressing it in a way that would give a satisfying response. And it's not like, I mean, you know, look, you know, I don't know that he would ever necessarily apologize, but it could at least explain something. But I think it's when we've seen this over and over. So I don't understand why this lesson has not been learned by Hollywood. You don't attack the fans, the fans, the people who give you money. You should not attack them.
No,
like ever.
And his best movie could make would be to come on a show like this. I mean, I know he'd never go on Clownfish, or like I said, I'm sure he'd be too intimidated to go on Friday night, knowing he'd be, you know, a lot of those guys, Ryan and them, would not hold back, right? Like, so he'd be going into a war zone. But like, yeah, if he would actually come out to a channel like ours, and not saying specifically ours, but like ours, and actually talk to the fans directly and not charge them $50 to talk to him, like he did. That was the biggest bitch move ever. I'm sorry.
But speaking of talking to the fans, I know that, Chris, we only have you for a couple of more minutes.
Yeah, I got to run.
That's here. I just want to. Mr. Tickled says, Chris, you always entertain us with your brain. Then you apologize. Never change, Chris. Hint. You're here for a reason. Shine on, you crazy diamond. So in other words, never apologize, because we love having you here.
Well, I mostly am apologizing for speaking expletives, you know, like just as some
fuck that
race, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, you know, fuck,
it's Midnight's Edge.
Real quick, Mariko Ann wonders, Chris, is it fair to call Kevin a narcissist?
Oh, I think most people in Hollywood are narcissists. I think that's one of the most common personality traits of everyone in Hollywood, which is why people here are so full of shit. But my Michigan, my sort of Detroit bullshit detector goes off when I meet almost everyone. So you have to have some big balls and some level of narcissism in order to be able to, I think, traverse this effed up industry, an incredibly effed up industry. But I also think you have to have some self-awareness. And I think that definitely comes with age, I think. And I would think that like Kevin at this point has got to have some level of self-reflection, right? Like, I mean, he has this movie coming out later this year. That's a documentary about his life story. I thought I knew everything about him, and I learned a lot in this documentary. It does, the whole doc doesn't blow smoke up his ass. I mean, it really delves into like a bunch of the Harvey Weinstein stuff, because, you know, Harvey Weinstein kind of made his career in the beginning. I know that like Quentin Tarantino recently addressed that on, I think it was Joe Rogan and some other shows.
Rogan, yeah.
Yeah, he's been doing the circuit with that book, which I just picked up, the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novelization, which I love. The concept behind that, I think, is genius. But yeah, you would think that Kevin would have, especially the kinds of stories he's told, which are not 100% flattering, you know. So you'd think that he would have some self-awareness. I just think that it hits hard because it's Kevin, and it's this. Now, is every franchise compromised? Is there nothing? I mean, I fear for the ones that I even am looking forward to. Kenobi, you know, I don't know. I'm not really into the Disney Plus series, but Kenobi could be a really fascinating story about what turned him into a hermit. Is he going to have another duel with Vader where Vader's a badass, right? Like we see Vader in his prime. I know doing another duel would be kind of dumb, but it would be interesting to explain with Vader, maybe some parting, if you ever leave this planet, I will kill you. They have some, because, him just going back to the same planet with Luke having the same last name is a little suspect. I think he could be tracked down. I think people in the universe might know that person exists. I don't know. The Kenobi series is probably the only one that interests me. Now I'm on a rant. And I won't apologize for it. Fuck that.
No, good. That's good. And also, before you go, Eric K says, Chris, I have been binging your content around. Very insightful and entertaining. And Mark Whitener says, Chris, I've been trying to find the novelization of the 1980s Flash Gordon since you talked about it. Not impossible to find, but pricey.
Yeah, that one, oh my God, that one is so weird. I mean, I read it when I was a kid and it kind of warped my brain because the writer clearly was like on a deadline, had to finish it probably in a weekend. And what's weird is the stories that have nothing to do with what happened in the movie. Like, you gotta get it. Yeah, it's pricey, but I am very fortunate that I have a copy of it. I've saved a bunch of these. I didn't realize they were worth money. I just go to used bookstores and I find this stuff. I guess if you look for it online, it would be pricey, but I don't know, find some like really cool used bookstore in a small town. And I always head for the paperback section and look for weird movie novelizations.
Yeah, indeed. So that's a great advice right there. And then let's see. Your Muslim uncle said, "For love of attack of the show."
What's that?
He said, "For love of attack of the show."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super chat. The super chat was for attack for love of attack of the show.
So
yeah.
It's supposed to come back. We'll see. We'll see what it is. I'm not really in the loop on it. We'll see what G4 will evolve into. I am doing a documentary about the history of Attack of the Show, and I found out what some of the other names were for it, and I can't wait. I can't wait for people to discover the stuff that's in this documentary that I've been working on. I'm doing actually an event in Second Life tomorrow, and because I got to run, just real quick, yeah. I will be on a live stream later tonight. I think at 5 p.m. with Ryan Cannell of RK Outpost. He invited me on the show to have a conversation. It's so we're gonna chat. I've followed his work as well as like everyone that's sort of like splinters from FNT, right? Like that's introduced me to a lot of really cool folks. So if you want to come back and chat with me, I'll be with Ryan later today at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So there you go. By then I'll probably have, I say I love doing this show because I literally woke up and grabbed coffee and sat down and got the link from Tom and came on. Like I am wearing what I slept in. And I'm so glad that you can enjoy my little Funko inspired avatar.
No, that's awesome. And we love having you here, and the chat loves having you here. So you're always welcome. Yeah. I'm just going to refresh real quick and see if there came any more messages for you recently before we let you go. Let's see. At first glance, I'm trying to hurry here, but I think we are up to speed.
Great.
Yeah, I think we're up to speed. So everyone, be sure to then check out RK Outpost later for Chris's next appearance.
And Andre, thank you so much for having me on the show. Tom, thank you for your support and reaching out and having me on. I've always been opinionated, and what I do is I love and enjoy this kind of conversation. It's the conversation that we would have at Comic-Cons, mainly in the hotel lobby during like San Diego Comic-Con or Dragon Con, which is a favorite of mine. If you're in Atlanta or travel to that, that's probably one of my favorites. LA Comic-Con, I'll be there in December. wearing. I don't care. I'll wear a mask. I'll do whatever. I'm not stopping my daily life. I am living life, and I can't wait for the nerd tribe to be reunited. And we need to have conversations with each other, and we can respectfully disagree, but attacking is probably, I would say, is discouraged. I don't think that that's a good way to go. So thank you, Tom and Andre, for having me on again, and I'll be back.
Yes, and we look forward to it already.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, excellent.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us today.
Take care, everyone. Can't wait.
Yeah,
Wait to chat again. Thanks again. Later. Bye.
Fun.
Bye.
With that, let's finish up these super chats so we can get to some Ghostbuster talk.
Yeah, let's do that. Dash D's. Now we're going back to the real classics here, back to the beginning of the show. Dash D said for $5 Canadian. Best guess. Gee, thanks, Tom. Chris Gore, huh? Never mind, Sigh. So yeah, Dash D's was quite happy about having Chris Gore here. Polaris Sucks says, Chris, I watched a few videos with you yesterday. You're great. Also, just curious, is Rob still around? No, he's not still around. Well, he is, but not here. And Hypergiver 2 said for $5, instead of talking about LGBTla and the misandrists of the uterus and Crybaby Smith, can we just dote on how good Ghostbusters and Dune are looking? Yeah, we already did some Dune in the beginning, and we'll get to some Ghostbusters afterwards here. Stephen Otten said, Hail Andre, Tom, Chris, Wrenches, and Midnighters. Please go back to the other thumbnail. It had Samara weaving on it. Yes, this is true. The thumbnail that's currently for the stream is a second thumbnail for it, because we changed it when Chris came on, and we actually spoke before the show, and that changed the order of topics a little bit. And I think thumbnail aside, the conversation was better for it. Books and Ice Cream says for $5, good story, great action. Snake Eyes was one of the better G.I. Joe movies. That's hardly a very high bar, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Granwasu42 sent us a Popcorn Super sticker. And Master Clockwork says Midnight's Edge is filmed in front of a live studio audience. Naked Fame says LGBTla is my favorite one. Tom killed it. And then GEC812 says for $5 Australian regarding Abby versus Tila earlier question. You didn't account for all the hormones and steroids Abby injected over the years, with some female Hulk imagery there. P.S. Love you guys. Oh, thank you. And we love every single one of you in the chat to come out to support us, watch the show, just interact and be part of the community. We so appreciate that. And then Cino Bit says, for $5, there was a second live-action He-Man in 2012. Scarlett Johansson plays Tila. Chris Evans plays Man-at-Arms. Josh Brolin also plays an awesome Hordak. Yeah, wouldn't that be something? And Augie Ben Doggy says for $5, Sad Dune is being used to prop up HBO Max. Yeah, you're referring to Dune the Sisterhood. But yeah, that's kind of like their model now. For like every big tentpole movie, they always wonder, what spin-off series can we do
no,
here?
He's also talking about probably the fact that they're sacrificing its
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That is a point. That is a point. And then Mark Whitener says, Beyond the Trailer went on a huge rant about people not wearing masks or being, vaxxed. People like her are still going crazy about this crap. Yeah, well, she ain't the only one. Plenty of people do that.
I'm not
And
gonna. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get into all that. So
yeah, let's just move on so we don't get shut down or anything here, because there was a time when you actually could talk freely. That time is in the past. Centre West Gaming says for £5. In the film Masters of the Universe, Tila teased Woman at Arms. And Rama says for 100 Indian rupees, people just wanted a story about buff man beating up spooky skeleton man. They messed up a script that simple. I'm going to stick to anime and manga. Yeah, from what I'm getting, you probably can't go wrong with that. And Kostas Lavrano says for 20 Canadian dollars, thank you so much. Kevin Smith's perspective as a fan has to be questioned now. How did no one know there would be such backlash to aesthetic changes like to Tila's haircut? Well, yeah, but my answer to that is likely groupthink. I think that they probably had themselves convinced that this was all going to be fine. So reality must have hit them hard. Robert McRae says for 10 Canadian dollars, same plot as Transformers movie. Kill the main character, upgrade the main villain. Difference is the people who made Transformers liked the source material. And then Troy Pacelli says for $5, he actually told fans to grow the F up, man. His words in the mid of a proven lie. He's eating himself up. Good. Schadenfreude. So yeah, no, he walked right into that one, didn't he? And The Wall says for $20, fans think that Kevin Smith's change in behavior is due to his rapid weight loss and change in diet. His estrogen levels went through the roof and his T levels plummeted through the floor. Now he acts like Anita Sarkeesian. I haven't followed him closely enough to make that observation myself, but I'm sure many people are putting things into a larger context there. And Revkor says, My Little Pony got male fans without even trying. They just had good characters and mainly good stories. Yeah, that's cannot be underestimated. And Silver Nova says for $5 Australian, it seems to me that when the activists got into Hollywood, they shut the door behind them. Removing a few well-known ones, such as KK, won't be enough. No, that is for certain. That's something that we have said time and again as well. Just removing Kathleen Kennedy alone doesn't change all that much. There's still a whole system in place, whole new infrastructure to maintain what she brought. And Rama says for 40 Indian rupees, thank you so much. I'm a guy and I love My Little Pony. It's a fun show. Yeah, there are quite a lot of guys who do that, particularly the 80s series. There must be something to it. And Shaman McLamy says for $5, the only reason Tila had to bail on the kingdom was because how can our strong, independent women work for some king? Can't think of another reason. That's actually a really astute observation, I have to say. And Mercenary X21 says for $5, to expand on your metaphor, He-Man was like buying a Ferrari, and it looks like one on the outside, but inside it's an Edsel. Unfixable problems and all. And then 200 Watt Studio says, Andre, please let Chris finish his point before interrupting him. His points are just as valid as yours. Oh yeah, sorry about that. We'll get carried away, but I think that we gave him a lot of opportunity to talk. And Christopher Wayne says for $10, Kevin Smith doesn't need to be a fan of anything. He should approach his work the same way Harv Bennett and Nick Meyer did Star Trek. Yes, exactly. And that involves doing some level of research, which Kevin Smith clearly never did. Willie Woodward says for $5, I'd argue that you can have a message in popcorn movies. RoboCop comes to mind, even Star Wars. Problem is that you can't be artsy-fartsy about it like indies. And then Naked Fame says, Kevin, you're such a tease. Shut up. And with that, we have a few more super chats to go through. But before then, let us get back into the show a little bit and talk some Ghostbusters. Tom, how did you like the trailer that came yesterday?
Well, this trailer, oddly enough, was exactly what I said the trailer needed to be, because if you remember the teaser trailer that came out, almost a year ago now, if not more, I showed it to my mom, who's a normie and watches a lot of stuff, but she's a normie and she didn't hate the 2016 movie, but she always was a fan of the originals. And I showed the trailer and she's like, well, where's the girls? And that was what I was afraid of. And I'm assuming a lot of the general audience didn't quite know what to think of that if they saw that. But now this trailer, there's no denying what this movie is supposed to be. And I'm glad they did exactly what I was hoping they would do. Give us an idea of what the story was, make sure we knew that the tone was going to be classic Ghostbusters. And on top of that, letting us see at least a couple of the original cast so that normie people, or the general audience, sorry, I shouldn't say normies. So the general audience knows that this is Ghostbusters 3 and not a sequel to the 2016 film. But of course, Twitter had to have their way with that. But there was another problem. I saw a lot of people who were more upset, seeming to think that this movie is not going to be funny, which I'm not too worried about that. I don't know about you, but I'm curious. I like the trailer. I thought it gave us quite a bit without giving us too much. I like the tone. I like the look. I like that it feels like the original Ghostbusters. So yeah, I'm on board with this. I hope it doesn't run into any of the modern problems we have. It has the capability of doing that. But yeah, we even have some look at the figures coming out here. I'll bring up on screen as you give your reaction to the trailer.
Yeah, as for me, I thought it was really good. We got some really nice throwbacks to the original movies. It was like fun seeing like the original Ghostbusters commercial that they checked out on YouTube. We got like a hint of them still being there with Dan Aykroyd. At the same time, we know that Egon, he got his happy ending. He got to settle with the woman he was always meant to be with. And on top of that, he also, they had a family and everything seems to have worked out pretty good for them. So I thought that was like a nice close for the character, a nice way to like reference him in the movie. So good continuation of the original. My one and only issue is that the kids that we're going to be following, I think they're a bit young to be like Ghostbusters. I would have preferred them to be older, that you have like mostly adult Ghostbusters, like at least in their 20s. I do have an issue with that. Outside of that, looks fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some logistic questions, and arguably they're legitimate questions about, the age of the grandchildren, when Egon would have had this child.
I mean, I would have preferred that it was like the not necessarily the grandchildren, but like the first generation children.
Yeah.
Or like so that they could be like older instead of.
Well, he could have had like Oscar, and I'm sure all the rest of the crew could have had kids over the years that they could have brought in and stuff like that. And I don't think anybody would have had a problem with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely.
I mean, I do like a lot of the callback to the first film. I like how they're really bringing in a lot of elements from that, and how this is kind of picking up with the idea that Egon had put all this stuff out at this farm, and clearly he chose this town because it's connections to Evil Shandor and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, the toys kind of leaked out, so we're getting a few things here and there, but I don't think anything too bad as far as like spoilers. we at least know for sure now most of the Ghostbusters are there. The only one we haven't heard anything about is Rick Moranis. We even got to see Janine in the trailer. We got to see at the very end, at least we got to hear Dan Aykroyd. But that's pretty much what I said to begin with. Is
And then we also have some toys that kind of spoil the original remaining Ghostbusters in costume.
Yeah,
which is brilliant. So yeah, I'm looking more and more forward to it. I really am.
Yeah, I mean it's I mean, again, those who are saying it doesn't isn't Ghostbusters supposed to be funny? We had this conversation last night on Mead, and which is a separate channel, folks. If you haven't checked out Midnight's Edge After Dark, please do. We do a whole other podcast on there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, along with other things and other fun stuff that we normally don't do on the main channel. But yeah, we got into this discussion there, and we're just like, look, I can see how it's like I said, go look at the trailer for the first and second Ghostbusters. There really isn't a lot of jokes in there because it's really hard to show the kind of jokes that are in Ghostbusters in a trailer. Now go to the 2016 film, and maybe the only two jokes that really landed in the movie are in the trailer, and they're better in the trailer because they are cut better in the trailer. See, and that's the difference you have here. And I've seen people comparing like Ghostbusters to Happy Gilmore. I'm like, hold up. Those are two completely different comedies and completely different genres in a way. Because Happy Gilmore is a completely like, no. See, obviously people are not understanding what kind of movie Ghostbusters was. Ghostbusters was funny because of the concept and the way the characters react to real events. Like those characters are playing it straight, right?
Yeah, Ghostbusters is. I hate it when people say, "But it's not funny. It's not a Ghostbusters wasn't a comedy."
I mean,
it
is,
might
but
have
it
been
isn't,
that
right?
too, but it wasn't. It wasn't a comedy first and foremost. This
Not
is
in
a
the traditional
fundamental
sense,
misunderstanding.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like there's several different subgenres to comedy, and you know clearly Ghostbusters is not in the same category as Happy Gilmore, or even something from a lot of the same people, even Caddyshack for that matter. Two totally different kinds of comedy, you know. And as we were pointing out, we talked about probably one of the funniest scenes of the movies where they're all in the elevator at the Sedgwick, and they're on their way up. You know, it's like we're all carrying unlicensed nuclear accelerators on our back. Yeah, I wish we had more time to test this stuff. I blame myself. Yeah, me too. How can you put that in a trailer? That whole scene, you need the setup, you need everything to go with it. And that was our point was Ghostbusters is not the kind of comedy where you can just throw crap in the trailer and it be funny. You need the entire setup for that. And the second film is the same way. Even though the second film isn't as funny, the trailers were the same thing. Not exactly advertising the fact that it's a comedy, but of course, yes, Dan Aykroyd and the guys were inspired by, you know, the Abbott and Costellos meet your insert your monster here and the Ghost Breakers and all those kind of movies from back in the day. But they were also bringing to the table was, and it was the same thing with Animal House. And that was where Harold Ramis was like insistent, I'm sure, on this is that you have to take this seriously, right? Like the things that make this important are going to be that people are believing the ghosts. They're believing this story. And once they believe that, they believe the characters, then all the humorous stuff will come out of that, right? Like it wasn't like, unfortunately, like they did in the 2016 film, made all the ghosts all cartoony, right? Which is a problem they ran into in the second film, but that's a whole nother conversation. In that first film, though, those ghosts were scary. They were real looking and they weren't pulling any punches. And I see the same thing in this trailer here. So I like it.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I like too. That it kind of understand that it's not a comedy first, it's something else. And then the comedy, as you say, it comes from the situation, but it's not forced like it was in the 2016 movie, which was because Paul Feig, the director, didn't understand the original movie. He thought it was a comedy when it wasn't. But he genuinely thought that all Ghostbusters was a means for the hottest comedians of the day to showcase their comedic talent, which wasn't the case at all. But that's what he thought, and that's what he did in his remake. He did it as a showcase of the talent of what he considered the funniest comedians of today, all of which were women, because Paul Feig hates men. And yeah, that's the movie he made, and it was a complete and total disaster that unfortunately became part of the political conversation and everything at the time when it came out, and we're all ported for it.
So yeah, so I mean, for the most part, though, it seemed like the response was pretty positive. But again, of course, Twitter can't not lose their minds over something. So I'm interested what you guys think in the chat. Let's see what you guys are thinking. Bryant Barth says, "Will the woke hate Ghostbusters Afterlife?" Well, I guess it depends on how the movie plays out.
No, I think they're determined to hate it a little bit anyway, because it
there is
isn't.
that.
There's some that will hate it no matter what, but I don't think that's most people. I think most people, apart from some weirdos on Twitter, are going to recognize it for what it is and will come to appreciate it. That's just my theory.
Right. Again, it'll all depend on how the movie plays out. I think that's the bigger question. Let's see what else. Cobra Khan says, seems fun.
I like that name.
Yeah, seems fun, and the toys are great. All right. Let's see here. Batman Wow says Wokies will complain that the ghosts are not representative enough. Max Relax thinks the movie will be fun. Vicadino, if I'm saying that right.
Vicadino, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of the complaints, or at least one of the worries I can kind of see and understand. Stranger Things in disguise. There's a lot of people who seem to see that correlation, and I kind of see what you're coming from there. So yeah, let's see what else we got here.
Yeah, that goes to what I was saying too. That to me, it's like I'm not happy about them being kids.
Yeah, Chris is the Christian FS, if I'm saying that right, says it was good it made me forget about Kevin Smith. Well, that's a good thing. Skybreaker 1337 says cautiously optimistic, so that's a good thing. Who here likes the movie House with a Clock in the Wall? Oh, okay, similar vibe. Anyone? Okay, I kind of get what you're saying, maybe with the kids and kind of the sort of scary but not like over the top, maybe. Yeah. I guess that's a fear of some. Is this going to be too kiddie?
Yeah, and Lindsay, the cynical geek, also says cautiously optimistic. I've no doubt that Jason Reitman put some TLC in the movie. Oh, I'm sure it's like the family business, isn't it? My concern is the kids. While yes, the franchise appeals to kids, the tone of the movies are adult. Yes, exactly. Here's like the thing. I just know when I was a kid, you know what I did not want in any movies? Kids. I didn't want anyone that I could see myself with. Yeah.
I mean, depending on the film, but generally no. Yeah.
Yeah. Like not even as a kid did I want kids in movies, and I never ever identified with like the kid character that was just annoying to have there. That's my point of view.
That's when I will disagree a little. Like I do enjoy some movies when I was a kid where specifically I probably wouldn't have had it not had a kid as the main.
Yeah, if the story really called for it, and obviously, but not as like a point of view, and this is the character that kids are to identify with. Somehow, even as a kid, I was always able to spot that, and I never liked it. I did like it fine when it was like the story kind of like called for a kid. It was about a kid. It was a kid story. Then I was cool with it.
Okay.
But not if it was like some of my all-time favorite movies, like even when I was a kid, and to this day, are some Swedish movies. There's 3 of them that take place in Sweden in the early 20th century. And they're some of the best movies ever made. I would say the title, if there was any chance you would be able to. Well, so they're called Emil and Lundeberg, if anyone can find them. And the Scandinavians will know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe some Germans too. I think it was called Michel in Germany. Beyond that, I don't know that they ever been released anywhere. But they're incredible movies. And that's the story about a kid growing up in a Sweden that is no more.
Andrew Hoyle brings up a good point. He says, I have a strong feeling Leslie Jones will hate it.
Yeah, I have a strong feeling you're right.
Indeed. So yeah, I mean, once this is, yeah, that's the only reason I see that side of things going off about it is because clearly, this will erase the third film. And hey, Yellow Flash, how you doing? Yeah, I did see the figures. I actually shared them on my Twitter. All three of the ones I had anyway, pictures of. So yeah, I did see those. As far as the series goes, I think Andre and I are kind of in the same boat on that. It's kind of like with the 2012 TMNT series for me is like, yeah, it's not made for me. I don't really care for how it looks.
You mean like the Masters of the Universe, like the other one?
The CGI one coming up, yeah. But as long as it's like that 2012 TMNT series where it's mostly harmless and doesn't really fuck with the lore very much, I probably won't care. But like you were saying, Andre, you have a young one who's coming up to right about the right age for that.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm hoping is that that's something that I'll be able to see with my youngest. That he'll be just the right age for it, and something that I can enjoy with him, and that it's something that's actually going to be a male role model in entertainment, which is something that we're sorely lacking right now. Again, like the closest thing that you have to a male model right now in anything that's aimed at kids is Ryder, the soy boy in Paw Patrol. That's the closest you can get.
Absolutely. And it looks like Yellow Flash is excited for Ghostbusters, so there you go on that one. Brian Bart says, how did Ghostbusters Afterlife come to be? What happened to the 2016 franchise? Well, Brian, do yourself a favor. To the right place. And I believe Andre probably has a playlist set up for that. All right.
Yeah, actually, if you go into the Midnights, just go to playlists, because not all playlists are featured on like the main channel. There's a whole host of other playlists. So if you just go into the playlist, there's one for Paul Feig's Ghostbusters, and there you're going to find the full story in minute detail. And basically what happened is that after all the politics and everything that went into it, Paul Feig's Ghostbusters tanked upon release. It flopped so bad, it lost Sony so much money that there was absolutely no way that they could continue with that iteration of the franchise, even though it was meant to kickstart the whole Ghostbusters cinematic universe. And even Amy Pascal, the person who was responsible for that movie happening, she who blocked Ivan Reitman from making the third Ghostbusters movie for years, even she had to admit in the end that this is Ivan Reitman's franchise, and stepped to the side while he made the movie that we should have gotten in the first place. So yeah, that's what happened with the one with the ladies. It just tanked so badly. There's very little else to say about it.
All right, and I just got a little bit of news across the transom. We got some early reviews from Suicide Squad.
Oh, that should be interesting.
It's getting 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes right now from 46 reviews so far.
Okay, well, that's promising.
That's pretty good average.
I've got to say it is.
And again, really we know Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregator, right? So, it is what it is. But a lot of these scores are like 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, B+, 4.5 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5.
I still think it can be a really fun movie.
Yeah, so these are all the major critics, though, so keep that in mind.
Yeah. These are the people that were the most supportive of Gunn and his vision in the first place. But still, with that shark guy and everything, I have to say I'm kind of like looking forward to it. The first trailer, I know that didn't do much, but the later ones. And of course, there's John China, who is in it, who kind of has ruined himself. But still, Shark Guy has my interest.
Absolutely. And Thanos 2024 has a $2 super chat with a good question here, and to take us back into super chats. Theories on why it's called Afterlife. Well, I think a good reason is it's a play on the fact that Egon is still a very present character, even though he's not there anymore. Some people have claimed to say they saw him as a ghost in the trailer. I have to go back and look and see. And then the other fact is that, the Ghostbusters still have a little life left in them, obviously, as does Gozer and that whole business. So I think there's just a big play on the fact that it's been that many years. This is kind of a reboot-quel of sorts. Andre, do you feel basically the same way?
I feel much the same way. I think that's what it's like. I think it's a matter of it's like a double or triple play even. You thought that this franchise was past its prime, but it still has some life left in it, even in its retirement and golden years. And the same with the characters, and maybe even Egon himself in a literal sense. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what they're going with there. I really do.
And we got a new member, Camilo Villegas. Thank you so much. I'm sure I'm
welcome, Camilo Villegas.
Thank you. I was going to say, why don't you say it? And Steven Simmons, no, we didn't. I don't think we skipped over your super chat. We're going to go back and get
we haven't missed anything because we still have a host of super chats to go through. We're just hopping a little bit back and forth. Yeah. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah, and we got one we can bring up on screen here. At least it's the last one I can anyway. Rod Thunderheart sends us Canadian $5, eh?
And he says, "Hail, Andre and Tom. Kevin Smith screwed us with his Mistresses of the Uterus. I am thoroughly enjoying One Punch Man. Cannot recommend it enough." Yeah, people keep on going on about this One Punch Man. So it must be something incredible. And then I can actually bring up something more. One from Camilo Villegas himself. "Great show, Tom and Andre. I think that Ghostbusters should be an example of what a blockbuster movie should be. It's a classic franchise new for kids. It will have a toy line, merch, and more." Any thoughts? Yeah, I hope it's
we've already seen the toy line. Yeah.
I hope it's going to bring in a whole new generation of kids that will discover the brand because of this. I mean, nothing is like better. Like if kids discover it on their own, and then it's something they can share with their parents and stuff, would be brilliant. So yeah, I hope, really, really hope.
I mean,
all of that.
And honestly, I mean, there was a lot of people, and I understand impatience. They were like screaming for the last year, "Where's Ghostbusters?" And I was right there with you, but I also knew that they were going to push this movie off because this is one of those franchises where they had zero reason to get it out during the current situation, because there's no reason to. It's not picking up from where a sequel left off. It's not suffering from the Black Widow syndrome or all these other things that
exactly it can wait.
It could wait, and not only that, they'd probably do them a great benefit to distance themselves as much as they can from the
it gives them more time, and the movie's already filmed and in the cans. Exactly. They don't have to like rush anymore in terms of like filming.
And not only that, they already have it. With it. Yeah, I guess over the past year too, he said.
Yeah. So no, actually, I think that probably worked out good for the movie.
Then Douglas Nelson, our good buddy who always sends us some great art, says, "If Ghostbusters 2016 began the woke era, wouldn't it be fitting if Afterlife signals the era's end and a dawn of a new era that respects the audience?"
That actually would be very ironic and very fitting. And yeah, Ghostbusters, in many ways, was patient zero for all of the madness that we've since seen in pop culture. I mean, yeah, there was Josh Trank's Fantastic before.
And that was TMNT like to a point and a few other things,
Yeah, but still, that was like the Ghostbusters may not have been the first, but it was the first one that really took on a life of its own.
Clearly. And Mr. Tickle Trunk, I guess, has having some issues with Twitter, who is one of our wrenches. Sorry to hear that. "Insist on my phone number. No thanks. New account and already demands my phone number again." Yeah, you got to kind of give it to him. If you don't want to give it to him, it is what it is, man. We'll have to find other ways. But yeah, sorry about that. You didn't have to super chat that, man. You could have tried to find another way to contact us.
But we do appreciate, though. So
yeah, my email's pretty easy to get a hold of, too. So if you're on Facebook, just hit me up on Facebook as well. Max Relax says, "Donation for the cigar, Andre." There you go.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoy a good cigar
That
every
should
once
buy
in
a
a while.
decent one, I would think. Chrono says, I don't think Hollywood and Disney understands that there are not our heroes, idols anymore, that YouTubers, aka us, we have taken their places. You're not wrong on that.
I think there's something to that.
I mean, there is something to that, exactly. Because I mean, Robert makes this point once in a while, Robert Meyer Burnett, and Gary Tunnicliffe, I think, was the other one. If not, it was oh gosh, Tom Conkle, I think it was one of them guys.
I think they both may have.
Yeah, but basically, it doesn't matter. The sentiment is still true. Like one of them was worried about one of their films and how it was going to open and how it was going to be received by the audience, and somebody kind of made an off the cuff remark. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, you just got to compete with the Avengers." They're like, "Whoa. Like, yeah, you just got to compete with Avengers, and anything else that's out there right now is your movie as entertaining in that 2 hours as Avengers. Doesn't matter if it costs as much, doesn't matter if it has as many special effects, doesn't matter if it has all these things in it. But what it does matter is in that 2 hours time, does your movie do the same job?" And generally the answer is, well, yeah. Like it's entertaining enough that somebody does not feel like they wasted their 2 hours. Then you've done your fucking job, right?
And not only that, if you made a YouTube video or even a live show, with the budget of the microphones that went into it and coffees and whatever else to keep you going for that time. I got
a huge writer. I cost Andre a lot of money.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, like if that is able to keep the entertainment at the same time or at the same level, that also competes with the Avengers. And I know there's quite a few people that would rather actually see a live show on YouTube than see Avengers for the 12th time. So, yeah. And with that, were there any
let's
more
go back to the classic
chats before we? Okay, then
that's all the ones I can bring up anyway, unless you can.
Then we go back into the classic super chats. Then we have Great Cthulhu. So this is a little bit earlier from in the show. Who says for €5, Teela and Evil Lyn were as much in He-Man's shadow as Belit was in Conan's. I dread for Howard's Conan. By the way, now that we know what happened to He-Man. But here's like the thing. I'm not going to say, relax, I guarantee you that Conan is fine, because I can't do that. But what I will say is that Conan does have a corporate defender in Fredrik Malmberg. Does that automatically mean it's going to be amazing? No, it doesn't. But what I will point to is look at the previous movie from 2011. We have already documented how that went wrong, but it wasn't. It wasn't woke in any way, shape, or form. Conan had all of the quote-unquote toxic masculinity traits still intact, and I know that's something very important.
Right, and I think you and I...
That's kind of why it didn't happen at Amazon.
Well, I was going to say, I think you and I traced the problems with the Conan film back to a certain individual or producer, and then, the Conan thing at Amazon clearly fell apart, even though we couldn't get direct answers. We were kind of told just to kind of read between the lines in so many words. Yeah, let's put it that way.
We kind of saw what happened there. So I'm not going to say that we are completely out of the woods there, but I will say that Conan has a much better chance than many other things. Also, because with Conan, there is really just one character to get right, and you can shift him from diverse location to diverse location, and you can have all kinds of supportive characters to meet any kind of quota, and it actually be a natural part of the story. That's the beauty when you have one character who's a wanderer who travels the world. So actually, it's a fairly good chance that that Conan actually may make it through reasonably unscathed if everything goes well, knock on wood. And then Mr. 19 says Evil Lyn is the star scream of MOTU.
Kinda.
Just more subtle, but kinda. And Eric O'Sullivan says for $15, thank you so much. I got it. Tila not only becomes the new sorceress, she'll be first to not need a He-Man to protect her or Castle Grayskull. A fully realized warrior sorceress. Totally gonna happen. Adam lives happy ever after. You know
So
what?
she'll be LBT-Ra?
I wouldn't be surprised if you're right, if it kind of like ends up with that it ends up with Tila being the combined He-Man and Sorceress residing in Castle
Which would
Grayskull
basically
with
be
her,
She-Ra.
yeah, with her, how do we put it, little black love slave. I wouldn't be
I don't know if I
surprised
put it that way. Ouch, Andre. I don't know about that.
Yeah,
You're gonna cancel for that one.
well, but still, you saw the dynamic between the two.
I'm not
I mean,
gonna
one was
argue that.
very subservient to the other, and actually, I reacted to that. I have a really unfortunate relationship going on right there.
Yeah.
So yeah. And Mr. Tickle Frank also says, I can super chat when I wanna. You ain't the boss of me. And he even says, eat it, Tom, take my money.
Well, Andre's taking it, but hey,
Yeah.
like I said, he's got to pay for my stuff, and my rider's expensive. By the way, it's supposed to be all green peanut butter M&Ms, not peanut M&Ms. Get it right.
And then moving on
difference.
with the classic super chats, then we have, let's see, Scott Ruggles, who says there is a conspiracy. It is to take down the patriarchy by emasculating male heroes and women taking their place. Academia in the 90s was the start. Well, yeah, I'm not going to completely disagree with that. And Tron Forward says for $10, unfortunately, I watched this after Castlevania. People say the animation is good in MOTU, but by comparison, the shots, speed, creativity, movement is all on much higher level there. There absolutely is something to that. And then Scott Ruggles says, Part 2, the hero's journey, is the framework for the Western male myth. For females, it's the goddess. It's why there are so many Mary Sue characters. And Mr. Tickle Trunk says for $5 Canadian, we got that already. That was for Chris, how you always entertains us and never apologize. And then let's see, we got this one. Rama says for 100 Indian rupees. Fans across the world are tired of being Hollywood's target for either insults or diversity. They should remember we are the diversity they seek. Yes, very true. And Bishop Cruz says for $5, there is a result of putting so much weight on a major twist. Kevin lied to stop spoilers, but the story has nothing going for it without it. Very true. Master Clockwork says for $5, I don't know exactly when it happened. It feels like around 2014, but it's become taboo to criticize media and creators unless they don't toe the line. Unfortunately, there is something to that. And Bishop Cruz says for another $5, if Netflix wasn't worried, he wouldn't have released an official video assuring people Adam wasn't dead and to wait for part 2. Yes, very good point. Tom, what do you think about that?
I'm sorry, reread it to me, the last part.
Yeah, the last one was that if Netflix wasn't worried, he wouldn't have released an official video assuring people Adam wasn't dead and to wait for part 2.
See, that's my thing, is I wonder how much Netflix was really involved, because like going off of what Chris said, Kevin is one of those that's kind of a recluse. Like, he's not been known to be able to just like keep reined in like what he's going to say. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to go out there and fuck up some NDA. But I'm sure he knows enough where the line is to a point. But I see more of Netflix coming out and coddling him more than him making Netflix look good or anything like that. So, like, I think if anything, Ted Biacelli was like, I'll take the heat because he's more than willing to, because then it makes him look like a good leader. And then Netflix is just sitting there just kind of going, wow, well, we got to do what we got to do, you know, because this is kind of big now and we didn't expect it. I'm sure they didn't expect it to be this big of a deal. Right. And Kevin is one, like, I think Chris is right. He lets a lot of honesty slip through his bullshit. And when he says Netflix probably doesn't care, they probably don't. In a way, I don't think they do. I mean, I know we want to think they do, but at this point, yet at this juncture, I don't think they give a shit. They're just enjoying that it's being talked about. Now, if Kevin continues down this road, I think the thing is that Netflix is seeing the numbers now, so they're not paying any attention to what they're going to lose. Now, if this comes back in whenever, December, whenever it's supposed to come back, they have not announced it yet, and it does half of the audience, then shit will hit the fan. Then they may shit can Kevin before the second season and or put a gag order on his ass. Because then they will see the repercussions of this. Because this is a lot like Disney, I think, in that sense. Because you got to remember, right after The Last Jedi, they were unaware that the fans were unhappy. And it took them a while to learn that. To the extent that they even extended, you know, Kathleen Kennedy's contract, and they poo-pooed on Trevorrow's script and any of the changes he wanted, reportedly. So again, I mean, we're stuck in a situation where these people think they're doing the right thing, and as long as certain people can sit there and convince those inside that all these people that are bitching and pissing and moaning are nothing but, you know, what they try to paint us as, there's nothing's going to change. It's not going to change until they really start feeling the hurt. And I don't know if that's going to be anytime soon. Maybe Ghostbusters and this is a turning point. Because I mean, unlike Ghostbusters and other things, as we pointed out before, they didn't go out there and kind of tote the idea that this He-Man's gonna make men just be fucking piss in front of women or something like that. You know what I mean? They didn't go out there saying that right away.
No, not right away.
So to me, this was a little bit different. So this might be one of those turning points, and then Afterlife, again, going off what you guys have been saying in the chat, and feel that maybe that is the nail in the coffin they need to see that, oh shit, this is not working what we're doing here. But as Andre and I and many have pointed out to you, it takes years for sometimes these things to swing into another direction. And as things were kind of swinging a year and a half ago or so at this time, they're swinging back again because of the last year and a half. So it's a swing, that's for sure. I
And
don't
the
know
problem is that we don't like see the effect of that for like 2-3 years later. And one of my go-to examples is Birds of Prey. I mean, that movie is like, it feels like old now because it came just before the pandemic, because that feels so. But anyway, that's a good example because that was like greenlit the week after Deadpool came out. You can totally tell that in the movie. And there's like 3 years between the two, which only goes to show that that's kind of like the time frame. And also, movies like Terminator: Dark Fate and Charlie's Angels, they were greenlit before Ghostbusters, like Paul Feig's Ghostbusters came out at the time when everyone thought that, yes, this is the way of the future, because the audience hadn't voted against it yet. So that's like how slow on the uptick Hollywood sometimes is.
Well, and Bishop Cruz says the difference is that this was an official Netflix bid. And honestly, I think all the stuff that Netflix is officially releasing is stuff that he recorded a while ago. Just go by whatever he's wearing or how he's talking. Because like that video I showed earlier where he was talking about how it was going to be Tila and Eva Lynn's story kind of converging here in the last half, which is, again, him. He went back on that. Like, that's why I say I think that video was recorded like 2-3 weeks ago or more. Because we got to remember, Kevin is off just about shooting Clerks 3. They just did a table reading the other day. He's been in New Jersey and a few other places. So this is why I'm even surprised he's wrapped up in this. I think the latest thing and the only thing that he said lately has been his podcast he did the other day. So I think that's the newest thing he's said about any of this, because it's the only time he's really had to react. We got to remember a lot of these, what do you call them, promotional stuff and all that kind of stuff is done way in advance.
Right? Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Also, we have a very salient question on that note. House Atreides wonders, do you think the outrage against Kevin Smith and MOTU, do you think Amazon will have noticed and rethink the Lord of the Rings series? Tom, do you think Amazon are that clever?
Oh, it's too, the train's already way ahead. And again, I think Kevin is telling the truth when he says that Netflix don't care. And actually that goes with this other question here. Maybe both properties aren't as popular as everyone makes them out to be. SJW culture is only minor contributing factor to the failure of these properties. I think you're right to a point on certain factors, but when it comes to, I know you're referring to Ghostbusters and MOTU, so we have to address them separately. Masters of the Universe, even Andre and I don't think we even expected this series to be as big of a deal, right? Like, we knew it was going to have its little niche audience. And I think if the point that you're making is that Kevin made this show probably bigger than it was because of the controversy, you're probably right. But the other factor is the toy line is very popular. It has been very popular and gaining popularity over the last few years. And there's a collector's market for it. And what Kevin and Netflix did here, and smart at first, but the way an execution was done, was they were really marketing this show to where it would be supposedly enjoyed by the original fans, which are like people in our age group, and those who we can pass it on to, which be our younger children. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. And as far as Ghostbuster goes, the jury's out on that. Yeah, we have to wait and see how Ghostbusters 3 plays. And we'll never know for sure, because had they actually released Ghostbusters 3 proper instead of the 2016 film, the way that movie played, you can almost imagine that the other version would have probably played twice as good. So we're just stuck with, theoretical things here now until this new movie comes out. Now, if this new movie comes out and it makes $700-800 million to $1 billion, then there's no denying that they made a bad move to begin with, right? Like, oh yeah, that's the thing. So unless we get some definitive kind of if this new movie comes out and it makes like $300-400 or $400 million worldwide, then there might be an argument to be made that Ghostbusters just isn't necessarily that big of a franchise anymore. And you've seen that with Star Trek, right? Like, Emma Watts had to come out and flat say, and she said, like, we have to stop, we have to reassess this, because we cannot be spending $200 million on movies that the ceiling is $150 million at the box office, right? Exactly. So that's where this is going to be. So again, until we see how Ghostbusters plays out, well, that's one thing we don't know yet. But MOTU as a brand, I think Andre and I were just taken this by surprise by how popular it is. And I'm not so sure that Kevin and everybody's taken into account that this is a worldwide thing. Netflix is everywhere. People are watching this all over the world. Like, this just isn't an isolated thing. And one of the reasons why Midnight's Edge
people are pissed all over the world.
Yeah, they're pissed. And I was just going to say, because one of the reasons why Midnight's Edge Espanol, which we have a celebration tonight with Paulie coming up here soon, is because, there's other places where Masters of the Universe is very, very popular. One of them is within the Latino community, right? And that's why we're getting a big boost over there because of this too. And it's bigger than we thought. There's a lot of people who are passionate about this franchise than we even realized. And I think it was something like this series that needed to make it happen. Because of the aesthetics of it, and it's what people were hoping and wanting. But then when they got it, it wasn't quite what they were sold. So that's where the backlash is coming in. So I hope that answers those two questions. I know it was a long thing, but yeah.
Yeah, well, but
And
It is
Augie
what it is.
Mindoggy comes back with another one, says the kids in Afterlife is to have them young for potential sequels and even reviews. Yeah. Well, and that's what we wanted from the start, was a passing of the torch to a new generation.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't want them a little bit older than that.
I
I mean, like, I would like them out of the diapers before they start like Ghostbusters.
Well, now they're all in college, Andre. They filmed this movie so long ago.
Yeah, that's the beauty. Look, because,
and I'm almost
if they do make a sequel now, they'll be like the age where they should have started. But I still feel like kids as young as they'll be on screen in this movie really shouldn't be out hunting demons and supernatural stuff. I mean, they need to like leave that to the Warrens and the Conjuring franchise for the time being.
Yeah, I
get around to it
really hope the
later on.
kid factor doesn't take over here, because wasn't there even an episode of the real Ghostbusters where they had some kid hanging around like he was the junior Ghostbuster because he was the head of their fan club or some shit? So yeah,
I don't know. I don't
there was
really
even like a
remember
group
each
of them in the
episode.
cartoon, I remember. But yeah, anyhow,
May have been.
Thunderheart sends us a $5 super chat.
And he says, I'm excited about the coming Ghostbusters movie. It was filmed up here in and around Drumheller, Alberta. In fact, that's where Superman 78 was filmed. All right, cool. And with that, since we put it in the thumbnail, let's briefly talk about G.I. Joe and Snake Eyes, the movie which came out last week. Tom, did you see Snake Eyes?
You really think I saw Snake Eyes?
No, I know you didn't. I'm just asking.
Okay. Well, no, I did not see Snake Eyes, nor do I have a desire to see Snake Eyes. I've had enough people message me about Snake Eyes, and no offense, like, I mean, I know you guys are passionate about it. I just don't care on both levels. First of all, I was never a huge G.I. Joe fan, and granted, he was probably one of my favorite characters if there was one. But on the other level, I knew this was going to be an unmitigated disaster or just a lot of meh. Because it looked a lot like from the trailer, what we got was like straight to video level shit.
As for me, I would have been interested if it had been like more true to like I'm not an expert in G.I. Joe lore, but like the G.I. Joe iteration that was known from like the 80s cartoons and the comics by Larry Hama. If it had been closer to that, I would have been interested in this movie. But it wasn't, so I wasn't. So I didn't see it, and I don't know that I ever will see it. And apparently, judging by the box office, neither did too many others. So what do you think, where do you think that leaves the future of the G.I. Joe franchise, for one, but also the Hasbro cinematic universe that they were trying to set up here?
Oh, honestly, Andre, I'm getting flashbacks to the Mummy.
Yeah, to the Dark Universe.
Yeah, like this is
so
the non-starter. And then you got whatever his name, Dia Babanchadalali or whatever, over mucking around with Transformers. Because that was a stupid move. Let's be real. They are not paying attention to the audience.
No, they are not.
Because even though they're going off of, okay, Bumblebee didn't live up to expectations at the box office, without taking into consideration that you just gave us the same fucking movie 5 times, right?
And because the audience were freaking fed up.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Like they're
it's gonna take at least one movie to fix the damage.
Exactly my point. Like you had to wait until the next movie to see how Bumblebee really was received, and then go by video and by that. And you got to do it. You can't. That's Hollywood's problem. They are so quick to switch girlfriends. I swear to fucking God. Like, or however you want to put it. Like they the moment something doesn't seem to go right their way, they switch it and go in the other direction. And that's the thing, is they're so quick to overcorrect for themselves. But if they'd actually pay attention to the fans, they'd learn how to do this shit. And the prime example is DC. DC listened enough to where they did some corrections, but then they went and overcorrected, right? Like that was the thing. It's like, okay, we said we needed a little less dark, a little more light. We did not want you to go all the way over to fucking Super Friends. You know, like, you know, there's you got to find the happy balance here. And Bumblebee is a great example of that, where I think this entire Hasbro universe has killed itself before it even had a chance to get off the fucking ground. And Snake Eyes was the loudest fucking thud you could ever heard.
Yeah, and now they're going back to how the Transformers was before because
That's
the
my
producer
point.
is an idiot.
That's
so,
what I was
yeah.
getting at. Yeah. So like they're not even allowing that to have a chance to succeed. They're going right back to the crap that got them in this place in the first place on the Transformers end of things. G.I. Joe has been a non-starter from the start, and then they go to this extent. Like this was, I don't know what they were expecting to get out of this. Were they expecting this to be like the Fast and the Furious 3? Because like for a history lesson, that movie was made to go straight to video. It was meant to be like the last of the series. Like they didn't even have any of the main characters in it outside of a couple because Vin Diesel and all those guys had moved on because they're like, fuck, this thing's done. They're done. And then I don't remember what happened at the last minute, but they did some tweaks and changes. They had Vin Diesel come in and they're like, fuck, let's throw it in the theaters. And then between that and part 4, that saved the franchise. Otherwise, you got to do something like that here. This is not what they're doing. They're going right back. It's like they're going right back to the worst of it. And to me, Snake Eyes is a prime example of that, only the other direction. Like instead of harnessing what this should be, you're destroying what it could be. Like, I don't know what the fuck. They need to make a G.I. Joe movie that looks and feels like the 80s series. Oh, you know what? Better yet, set it in the fucking 80s. Like they did Bumblebee or whatever, because didn't that take place in the 80s or 90s or whatever?
Yeah, it did. It was.
I haven't watched it yet, but I know enough about it. Yeah,
it's a great movie. I cannot recommend Bumblebee highly enough. I certainly enjoyed it a great deal.
But yeah, I'd love to get a chance to watch it because I keep hearing these great things. But now that I know they're going away from it, it's like, what the fuck's the point? What the hell's the point? And Hasbro should take more control over this. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know
how much control they can take. I mean, I think they're trying, but they don't have the money to actually.
Bonaventura or whatever is the one who's making all the bad mistakes on the Transformer side.
Yeah, that's Lorenzo.
G.I. Joe, or who's behind that shit? I don't know.
I think he has some stake there too. I'm not entirely sure who's the one that's messing that up, to be honest.
Because I fucking hated the second one. Like I didn't dislike the first one as much. Like I'm like, yeah, it was all right. It wasn't necessarily a G.I. Joe movie, but it was not a horrid movie. That second movie was just like bad idea after bad idea after bad idea.
I have to say, I'm a little bit curious about how the new one is going to be and all that. If that's
well, that's my question to you. Then, do you think what are they going to do with the G.I. Joe franchise after this? This is pretty much like 2 thuds in a row, because even though I think the second film played okay, it didn't do nearly what they were expecting, because I think it only did like $200 or $300 million.
I think it's done for a very long time going forward. I think maybe the G.I. Joe movie will return at some point in the future, but I think the franchise is probably done for a decade.
I mean, and here's another situation where, like Masters of the Universe, the toys are very popular. The toys are very popular right now, and especially when they've been reissuing a lot of the 80s versions and larger versions of the 80s versions. They've been flying off of shelves. So, I mean, there is a fan base here, but is that the thing? Is it kind of like the MOTU thing? I think they really need to kind of reevaluate it. And again, I think going back to the 80s might be or at least that kind of a aesthetic, maybe, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Because it just doesn't feel, the movie didn't feel like G.I. Joe. And when I saw this trailer, it didn't feel like G.I. Joe. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. A very fair point.
We got a couple of super chats we can grab here on screen.
Yeah,
Lavender sends in Canadian $5. I love our Canadian crowd. We got a lot of people from Canada. I love it. Egon's granddaughter is the key to everything. Just watch it happen. It's going to be a bait and switch Stranger Things 2.0. It depends on how they do it, right? Like I don't know about her being the key to everything so much as I'm hoping, and as I see this as just a more of a passing of the torch, right? Like this stuff happens. They need the original Ghostbusters. And I think that, I'm sure Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson will probably stick around for another 2 or 3. Like, I don't expect Bill Murray and like Sigourney Weaver to keep coming back, right? But if this is popular enough, I can see like a series of films where, we have the little bit younger Ghostbusters, and they have talked about branching out into other, like there was that whole other movie that never happened. Remember, Andre?
Oh yeah, there were like
with Chris Pratt and all that other stuff that was supposed to go on simultaneously with,
even with Brie Larson.
Yeah. Even I think they even had talks of Brie Larson. You're right. Well, that was a little bit before, I think, but I see that as long as they do a good job, I think it's fine. But we'll all find out in a couple months, right? Like finally, hopefully. That not that alt-right guy sends in $10, says bit behind, but I'm like Andre. I was 2 when 84 Ghostbusters came out, remembering watching it with the fam a few years later. My son is now 2, and I can't wait to watch Ghostbusters with him if it's good. Andre was talking a little bit more about Masters of the Universe then, but it's same difference here.
Same as the principle applies.
Same exact principle here applies. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this trailer is it makes me get the feels of the classic Ghostbusters, and hopefully that carries through into the actual film. Craig Berkeley sends in 10. That's 10 pounds, right? Says, I thought Masters of the Universe Revelations was fantastic. A grown-up continuation of the 80s cartoon with a story that gave us so many characters to chance to shine while keeping He-Man in every episode. and
I don't know that so many characters got the chance to shine.
I was going to say, I mean, the only one who really got any real good screen time would be Teela, and it's not Teela. That's the problem people are having with it. Again, and I think people are fundamentally misunderstanding what some of the gripes are. Like, I don't think anybody's bitching about the story per se. It's just how it's presented and how Teela's reacting and acting in the story and how we're getting there. Because the short version of the good version script, and I kind of came up with that you could do the same exact story is, sure, okay, He-Man dies, right? Teela, who has just been made Man-at-Arms, also just now learns that she has this other destiny, and instead of accepting said destiny, she rejects it because of her loyalty to the kingdom, and that creates the same kind of problem she has in this show. And you could have the magic is gone, and the magic's not there because Teela's not taking her rightful place, so she could be part of that, and that could create that same struggle and problem in the show. But what instead you have here is Teela's like, well, what about me and my feelings and this and that, and that's not Teela. That's not Teela to a lot of fans. And I get it. There's a lot of people I respect, and I know are MOTU fans who like this show, and I understand why they do. But at the same time, I gotta say that I feel like it could have been done better. But no, you're totally nobody's gonna say you're wrong, dude. That's your opinion, and you have every right to feel that way. So
yeah, indeed.
And then Augie Ben Doggy, who's just been throwing them. I feel like I got to start taking some clothes off here, Andre. And I like the name too, which is a throwback to the Hardware Wars. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $3 goodbye. Have you ever seen that one? It's hilarious.
I cannot say I have.
It's one of the original parody videos. It used to show on HBO all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Just a little 7-minute like fake trailer for a Star Wars parody. Hoping for a Dragonlance series, Amazon should have bought that IP instead of Lord of the Rings. Well, at this point, I almost want none of these franchises to have to get anywhere near some of these streaming services. And if they do, as long as they have somebody like Frederick Moenberg or a separate company making them to where it's just kind of
you need like a separate quality insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quality control of type thing. Exactly. But no, like there's tons of properties that could be mined right now that aren't.
Oh, yeah, so many. But right now, at this particular point in history, I'd rather wait a few more years, to be honest.
Exactly, yeah. At this point, I'd rather just wait till things kind of calm down a little bit.
If they calm down. But assuming that they will, I'd wait. Like, can we like not have entertainment like the next 10 years, or just get by on reruns and old comics?
Things were shut down for a year, and unfortunately, we had too many things happen in the meantime that swung things back the other way, like we were saying earlier. But otherwise, we could have been on the other side of this, looking pretty good, because they'd have been so desperate that it just like, we don't care, just do it. But no, I think it's funny you bring up Dragonlance, because between things like Dune and Lord of the Rings, I've been saying this for a while. I feel like that may be the next thing, after superhero movies, is like we're due for something like that. And I don't know if Lord of the Rings is going to be it, but you never know. Dune might have a shot. And then Darius Munchausen sent us a super sticker. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. What is it? I can't see it from here.
Give me 1 second. And,
probably a popcorn, or I hate to assume because I'm always wrong.
Yeah, because for those wondering, because you see, it's a popcorn.
Yeah,
but we don't see from our software here. Ironically.
I have to open it up in the other thing. Stephen Otten, how you doing, buddy? Says, any thoughts on Predator 5? A, being a prequel, and B, PG-13. Tom, check your Twitter. Oh boy, now what? Let's see here. Where am I checking my Twitter here? Stephen Otten, you sent me something on Twitter. I'm not seeing it. Let me see here. Nothing in my request. DM it to me, buddy, so I know exactly what you're like, because my Twitter gets flooded with shit, and I don't Twitter very good.
Meanwhile, we have some other classic super chats.
Let's get to those, yes, please, in the meantime. But as far as the answer to the PG-13 crap, who wants a PG-13 Predator? As far as a prequel, this is kind of the first I'm hearing about that part, unless I missed that somewhere before.
No, that was actually announced a while ago.
Was it? Okay, I knew it was supposed to have strong whammons, and honestly,
it takes place like a few hundred years ago, with a predator taking on a native.
That's right. Yes, you're right. I totally spaced that out. That was one of those things where we all
in principle,
it would be a great idea. Yeah, but.
And it doesn't.
Execution,
yeah, exactly. It's the execution that's the question, because you have to keep in mind that being big and strong isn't really necessary to go up against a Terminator, because he's going to be stronger than you anyway. You can bring up Schwarzenegger, but remember, he didn't beat the Predator in a fair fight. Physically, he was no match for the Predator at all. He had to use traps and dumb luck to be able to win, and of course he had to have the physical strength to make those traps. But he didn't win. But he didn't use brute force to defeat the Predator.
Are you deleted scene on Twitter? Is that the one? Because I see that's the only one I got tagged in with something with Predator. I haven't had a chance to read the story yet, so if that's it, then I got your tweet. So. But it will be a prequel with a female lead and be PG-13. Oh.
Well, as long as it's good, and so far with all of those things, it doesn't have to look good on paper, but still, I don't think we should dismiss it right away. All it takes is one good filmmaker to make something good out of it. So
we're getting to that point where it's
although I will say I'm not too optimistic.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we're getting to that point where in the Predator franchise now we're almost getting lopsided with less good than it's getting to be like the Alien franchise.
Oh, we were lopsided 3 movies in.
I don't know. I liked Predators. I like Predator 2.
I like Predators too.
I like Alien versus Predator. Alien versus Predator 2 I do not like. And I did not like The Last Predator. So at that point, there's still 3 better movies than bad. We get one more bad one, then we're going to start getting a little more because even Alien, you got Alien and Aliens. And then Alien 3 is
it depends on which version.
Well, not just that. It's it's a decent film, but at the cost of the second film kind of thing, right? On its own, in isolation, it's a good movie, but I hate what it does to the characters in the ending of the second film. So then it goes off the rails from there with Alien 4 and all that shit. So I don't know, we'll see. And then Kostos Lavrenos But thank you for that, Stephen. Just the same. But Costas Lavranos. Say this name, Andre.
Yeah, sure. 1 second. Kostas Lavranos says
Thank
for
you.
$5 Canadian. Any thoughts on Shang-Chi, fellas? Gotta say how this month's been. We may see Marvel take the first real L.
Well,
I will say I am excited for one thing in the whole Shang-Chi movie. The Abomination fight. That's it.
wouldn't Black Widow kind of be considered their first L in a way, the way they handled it?
Well, they say that it did good. Of course,
But
we
that's
have
what I
reason
mean.
to question it, but
Honestly, I know it didn't probably make its money back, and it might barely just make its money back. But the fact that they were trying
it can hide behind excuses.
yeah, they can hide behind excuses. But the fact that they just tried to inflate the fact, it's like, dude, Black Widow made almost as much as Fast and the Furious did opening weekend without the Disney Plus shit. Why are you hiding it? Why are you, regardless of what, this is what I made, point I made before too, but regardless of how we felt about the film, $80 million coming off of the situation we've been in for a Black Widow movie, a movie that technically nobody should be interested in, that's pretty goddamn good. That's probably better than they anticipated, I would imagine. And I think Chris was right earlier, was like, yeah, they may have made okay money off the Disney Plus side of things, but they killed that movie's momentum. They killed its chances of ever being a $1 billion movie.
Oh, yeah.
It may never ever been one, but I bet you it could have ended its theatrical run with like twice as much money that it did. Maybe not twice, but pretty close. And Shang-Chi, no, I think that Shang-Chi is not, I don't know if it'll be the first L, but I don't think it's definitely not going to be the movie that...
And I think the Eternals is going to be an even worse L.
I was just going to say the Eternals will be the one that'll be the bigger... Shang-Chi has got going for it at least that it looks fun. It's got the... you look at the trailer, you feel like you're looking at kind of like an old kung fu movie kind of thing in a way. It's got that charm to it, depending on how woke it is when we actually get into it. Yeah, I don't think Shang-Chi is going to crash and burn nearly as much as Eternals will.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the classic super chats. Thanks.
Back
I think
to
that's
the
the last one we
classic
can bring up.
chats.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got one more here actually while we're doing that. But yeah.
Yeah, from Andrei Medelski, who says for 50 Czech krona, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right. Looks like my program gets busier with Midnight's Edge. Monday was fun. Day the same. I'm hooked. Oh, awesome. Well, I'm so glad
Glad to hear it.
that you are enjoying the show. And
Yeah.
on Friday, we have Kamran Pasha.
Yes.
That's going to be a real treat.
Do yourself a favor and also check out Midnight's Edge After Dark as well. We do 2 podcasts. They're scheduled on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon. And then if you speak Spanish or would like to learn Spanish, we also have Midnight's Edge Espanol on those days as well. But that's in the morning at the same time as this show. So yeah, but Midnight's Edge After Dark is a little bit more racy. We have a little bit more
on
fun.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, same days.
Yeah,
as
you'll
After Dark.
see wackiness on there. Like, oh, I think Andre will like this one, so I'll show this one real quick. Why not?
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Beast Man, do you have any problems with shit sticking to your fur?
No.
Then get over here and wipe my ass.
Oh my god, that was hilarious, and Bam Margera would be proud.
Yeah, you see that kind of stuff on Mead. I got another one of those for you too.
We'll save that for me.
Yeah, we'll save that for the end or later. Yeah. And then Lockbeard threw one in here real quick before we get back to the classics. Thank you so much. And that's quite the beard there, buddy. Assuming that's you in the picture. If the shamed Optimus game up the matrix of leadership to anoint Bumblebee Prime, might have saved LK. Hey, CBS, I got an awesome Trek series. Just saying.
I think everyone has an awesome Trek series.
Oh, God, better than anything that Bad Robot has. If the shamed Optimus gave up the Matrix leadership to anoint Bumblebee Prime, might have saved LK. What's LK?
Would have saved. Let's see, LK. What could LK be for? Help us out in the chat here. What's LK for? Might have saved. What, Lion King?
Last night? Is that what it is?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Last night. Yeah.
Last night.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying now. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Well,
there we go. Yeah.
it
Transformers
might have
last
helped.
night.
I don't
Yeah.
know. See, those last.
I don't think it okay. All of those movies blend together. I don't even remember which one. I remember like one of them. There was like some Arthurian crap or something in it.
That's the thing. Every one of these movies, I can tell you, this is how they go.
Megatron became pixel art at some point.
This is how every movie is. Flashback to something in Earth's history that's connected with Transformers. Flash forward to today. Whatever that was.
Earth was Eternia, like center of the universe.
Whatever said thing was, is now in the hands of the Decepticons, and the Autobots got to get it. That's every single one of the movies. Every single one of them. Whether it's Arthurian times, like you just said, or cavemen times, or dinosaurs. That's every one of those fucking movies. And I guarantee you the next movie is going to be the same goddamn thing. Oh, Lord. Sorry. That's my biggest gripe with the two biggest gripes I have with the Transformer movies. Every one of them is the same exact fucking plot. And when they start fighting, I can't tell who's who unless it's Optimus Prime or Bumblebee. Once they start fighting, they start to blend, and I can't tell who the fuck is who. So, I mean, and I've never been a huge Transformer fan to begin with. Maybe that would help, but I don't like the designs. I don't like them at all. I think they look way too ugly. Michael Miller's sending in some South African rands here and says, when do you think we'll see a Matrix 4 trailer? Well, when's it supposed to be out? They've been holding these trailers really close to the release dates, especially with the HBO Max ones. And I think this is one that's supposed to be opening on HBO Max still, isn't it? Is that still supposed to be out by the end of the year yet?
I've lost track.
Let me look here real quick while you go back to classics.
Yeah, I have them ready here, so just
go ahead. I'll look it up.
Okay, well,
classics out in December. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I take it back. It jumped on me here behind the scenes.
Oh shit. Well, December.
Yeah, that's fine. I know where we were, so it's quick.
So my guess is we'll get a trailer about October.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Might get a teaser in the next month.
Yeah, that would be nice. Rama said for 100 Indian rupees, fans across the world are tired of being Hollywood's target for either insults or diversity. They should remember we are the diversity they seek. Yes. Yeah, speaking as someone from international markets, I'm also really fed up with Hollywood having to force their insanity of this week upon the rest of us. I mean, we never hurt them in any way. So, yeah. Well, Bishop Cruz says for $5, this is a result of putting so much weight on a major twist. Kevin lied to stop spoilers. The story has nothing going for it without it. And no, we got this one. Here we are. Dashti says for $5 Canadian. Being truthful is a social consideration. It's the right way to treat folks. If you don't, it's wrong. And it's a choice to do so. There's excuses. And Dale says for $5, how does it feel to have lived long enough to see all your favorite franchises go down in flames? Feels great. Quote from Red Letter Media that never gets old. And William Sova says for $10, thank you so much. If 5,000 of 20,000 hate it, then that makes it a quarter of the audience that don't like it. Kind of a big number if you ask me. Also, in yesterday's show, Fisto was going to be revealed to be Tila's father in the 2000s show. We'll see what they'll do with that. And Wolfbane says she's not even LGBT Tila. She's Vice Admiral Tila. And the Fessman 93 says, Andre, King Magnus Barefoot, died near my family's town. Maybe we could be related if I have Viking blood. Well, maybe the Vikings sure got around. So there's plenty of people that are that are related one way or the other.
And I just want
Difficult to document it's a different matter, though.
Yeah, I just want to address this thing real quick because it goes back to the trailer business, and this is something I know because I get it all the time. Just there isn't a day that goes by where I don't get a DM from somebody going, "Where's the Spider-Man trailer? Where's this trailer? Where's that trailer?" And I understand people are used to getting trailers so far in advance, but before even the whole pandemic thing and they changed how things go, because like right now I'm not surprised when we don't get a trailer like a month or two before it comes out because they're pushing it for a streaming service and in theaters. But there was a deal like a couple years back where there's always been this rule, I guess, that they never exactly followed. That's kind of like this deal where they're only supposed to put trailers out, I think it's 4 months before a movie comes out. And this was like some deal they made with like the MPAA years and years and years ago, but they never followed it exactly. And it started getting out of hand. So like you were starting to get teaser trailers for like a year and a half, 2 years out before a movie. And it was starting to really kind of cause a lot of confusion. So I think the theater association or whatever kind of said something about it like 2 years ago. And so the studios are like, yeah, you're right. We're going to back off and we'll follow this new plan. And what they're going to do is like, you're going to not see any real big major advertising more than 4 months before a movie. And they're allowed to tease like 1 or 2 big movies a year, like up to a month or 6 months in advance. And how they got around that though, and Andre knows what I'm talking about, is all the teaser trailers for trailers and the little behind the scenes vignette things that are dropped on YouTube that aren't exactly trailers, but they're trailers. So they get around that kind of shit. But at the same time, to them, it makes less sense to advertise something so far out when it takes so long to get there. Because in this day and age, the time seems to have, people expect it sooner than they used to. And so
it's shrink.
Exactly. It's more of a detriment to them to put something out 6, 7, 8 months ahead of time. Like another great example is MGM lost almost $30 million on the advertising just for No Time to Die when they decided to pull it at the last minute. They had already spent upwards of $30 million just on advertising. So all that went in the trash because a movie that wasn't going to come out when they said it was. So like they're a lot more cautious than they used to be on that part. So don't be surprised if you see this trend more and more often going forward, is all I'm trying to tell people. Like, don't expect a movie trailer any more than 4 to 6 months ahead of a film anymore. It just ain't going to happen that often.
Yeah, pretty much. And with that, let's go back to the classics.
And Melvin Billiard says, Tom, I love you, but here's some money to keep your clothes on. Well, thank you. Thank you. Even though we're in the middle of a heat wave here, I do like to be,
yeah, well, that's probably sending a signal. Don't get any ideas, Tom.
No, thank you. Because I don't have much to take off.
And then let's see, because it jumped on me behind the scenes here, which is always fun when it does. Yeah, but I think here we are back again. Mickey Rooney says for €5.
Well, hello,
At
Mickey
Citizen
Rooney.
Go, we launched a petition versus Netflix. Kevin has a point in that the suits hide behind millions of subscribers. Yeah, they have a model where they can kind of like touch up the mistakes.
Yeah.
And Wolfbane says for $9.99. Also, you guys should consider talking to the esteemed Lord Longbong of Mewshlington Abbey about MOTU and compare the mistakes of MOTU violations with Disney's Star Wars. It'd be an interesting stream. Yeah, actually, that would be interesting because, like, after what they did to MOTU, I kind of like feel the pain of those that are really into Legends more. There was a time when I was somewhat dismissive of it, which I regret now.
And we've made those correlations as well. And what was the name of the channel? Because I'm not even sure what this is, because I've heard it. This guy has pushed this quite a bit. Longbong what?
Wolfbane sent a clarification afterwards. Lord Longbong means Mauler. Longbong plus Britbong plus aristocrat down to Abbey-style British accent plus fucking massive equals Lord Longbong of Mewshlington Abbey.
Okay. Now, yeah, see, I didn't know that was one of his monikers. My bad.
Yeah.
Longman, gotcha. Yeah, Mahler, we'd love to have him on. I don't really have a direct line to Mahler, believe it or not. I've been on a dozen streams with him. But no, he's more than welcome on the show. We'd love to talk to him about some of this stuff. Yeah, so yeah, like naked pic. Just say Mahler, God. Because like the last few days, people have been saying this, and I don't think all of us YouTubers know that it's him, because somebody else said it on another channel too. They're like, okay, whoever that is.
Well, now we know at least.
Now we know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mahler, thanks for that clarification.
I'll definitely try to get a hold of him again. I'll do my best. We did the last time we've really coordinated anything with him was when we did the whole big international thing. But yeah, like otherwise, I've been on streams with him, but I just haven't had a chance to really talk to him outside of streams. So we'll definitely give it a shot. That's for sure.
And then we got 2 super chats from Peter Smigelski for $25 each. So, whoa, thank you so much. That's really appreciated. Really keeps the lights on here. And the first one reads, I missed being able to comment on your last live stream, but I have the 2002 He-Man reboot on DVD. Is there a better version or better quality version of that show out there? And I regret to inform you that no, if you have the DVD version, you already have the definitive version that is available. Not that exists, but that is available for us public to get. It has never been released on a higher quality format than the DVD that you already have. It's a shame that it hasn't gotten a Blu-ray release, because it was actually made in high definition. Yeah. So they could pump out the Blu-ray tomorrow if they so wanted to.
I'm surprised they haven't even done it digitally yet. Yeah.
Yeah, or put it straight to digital. They could do that too.
Yeah, because it was actually done in widescreen and everything. So
yeah. It's like the DVD is in widescreen.
Yep.
So, but as it is right now, you already have the best version if you have the DVD.
Which the DVDs don't look horrible. My biggest gripe with the DVDs is this got a ton of DNR on it for some reason. Like when titles pop up and stuff like that, you'll get a lot of the dots around them and around lines and stuff, which really, like I said, this was prior to when they figured out, if we just do an HD master and just, shrink it down for DVD, it looks infinitely better than if we add all this fucking DNR and noise reduction and all that shit on it. Which
DVD was put out, in 2005, I think?
It wasn't too long after the show dropped. Yeah, Tim Hayes, we're talking about the MOTU 2000 series.
Yeah. And then Peter
right
also says, I love He-Man and grew up on it like Tom and your other guests, but I don't want to watch this until the full series is out. Yeah, that's fair.
This says 2012 on it, but this is when I got the big box. That's when the big box set come out, so it might have been then. I thought it was before then.
Which
it has to be before then.
Show me.
2012. I got the one with Castle Grayskull, and it's in the package.
Oh, that's the classic series. Oh, that's like the third release or something.
That's what I'm saying. So I had I know, because I had the DVD box set by itself years before.
Yeah, the BCI DVD releases, they came out in like 2004, 2005.
Yeah, and that's all these are is reprints of those.
Yeah.
But it's put in this big box set is all. And that's what I said. I used to have that separate set. I just gave it away, unfortunately, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have the same discs already, so.
And then we have Gomer Kyle 79, who says, I can feel your pain, Tom. I loved Kevin Smith. We've all seen other famous sellouts, but this one hit hardest. 23 years of fandom flushed. And Peter Smigelski said for another $10. Thank you so much. Kevin Smith has made his living talking for the past 20 years. Him running his mouth shouldn't be anything surprising. This is what he does. It also seems everything was in place before he even came on as showrunner. Yeah, that's what I think too, that people are, like, you can blame him for what he said in public, but for the show, he should be blamed for not doing more research and not fighting Biaselli more. That's like, and probably they hired him because he was going to be a yes man. I think that was a big part of it, to be honest.
Yeah, Naked Fame wants us to refer to him as his High Holiness Booger Fart, the Fuckbucker Esquire. Futtbucker Esquire.
I'm not going to remember that, but I can
I was
remember.
gonna say that's a bit hard to remember.
Yeah.
Whew.
And then moving on, we have Planar Aspect, who says for $10, if Ghostbusters pulls this off, it will have done what Star Wars, others, and nearly itself failed at. Bring back our heroes while respecting its legacy, perhaps becoming the greatest franchise ever. I'd love for that to happen. I'd seriously love for that to happen. And Mecha J says, you guys should check out this YouTube video that came out recently called Masters of the Universe, Kevin Smith's Mistake Lesson. It is hilarious. Oh, I saw it already. It's basically...
You have to share it with me.
Yeah, you'll find it. It's basically, like in the original Filmation animation, how you had like the end of the story moral.
In this episode, we learned.
Yeah, it's one of those that talks about lying and the importance.
Today we learned a very special. That's my
yeah. So that's what. So yeah, do check that one out. And then Namco says for £10. I like the notes to Ghostbusters too. However, I never liked the dumbing down of Janine and Lewis. Plus them together is weird. Also, Egon. The proton pack is not a toy. I'm sure there's
a line from Jimmy too. Yeah,
there's going to be more to it in the movie. And Shaman McLamy says for $5, I think kid leads are a good idea for getting new fans. TPM came out when I was a kid, and all my friends thought Anakin was the coolest kid ever. Oh, the Phantom Menace is what he means then.
Yep.
And Xenobit says for $5, Ghostbusters was funny not because of the jokes, but because you had non-military skeptical scientists dealing with the supernatural forces. Yeah, that was like the fun thing there.
Well, and I mean, as long as Jason Reitman and Ivan, his dad, and Dan have put together something here that is, in the spirit of the original Ghostbusters mixed with a little bit of Goonies, I think we'll be all right. Like, because I think that's the kind of thing I hope they're going for. And the Stranger Thing thing. It was a copy of a copy, and it's become something that's been emulated over and over again to where really that's what to me got in the way of the It remake in a lot of ways, but not to go down that diatribe. But I hope that's not a problem with the kids. I hope it's more along the lines like Goonies. Because, I mean, we've even seen that first trailer actually has a few laughs in it. People forget. And I think that's another reason why maybe they released, speaking of the whole comedy bit, I think that's another reason why they released that clip with Paul Rudd. Because I think they knew this trailer was going to be a bit darker, right? So I think the kids are going to be funny because I laughed at that scene. Is like, remember that time when we died under our table in our kitchen, and like that whole bit and some of the other stuff. I mean, I don't think they're going to be overly woke. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, could be wrong. So I hope I'm.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be fine. That's really all we can do.
And I only watched the first season of Stranger Things, but I know they had a big Ghostbusters tribute for the Halloween episode. So,
yeah, I've seen the stills, although I've never seen the series.
I don't know. To me, after the first season, I'm just like, all right, I got it. I don't know. I just didn't really feel the need to go back to it.
Yeah, because it feels like very Amblin of the 80s, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I just felt like, okay, I get it. I got it.
I have no need for more of that myself.
I mean, it just felt... No, I totally got the appeal of it. And as far as the nostalgic value, they totally nailed the 80s for the most part, right? Like, of all these things in the last, 10 years that have tried to do this, we're in the 80s thing. They always get it wrong. They get it just a little wrong. This was one of the few that actually got it close. But again, it was definitely paying homage to things like the It miniseries. So then I think that in turn influenced the remake of It and a lot of other things that are happening right now. So I hope this doesn't suffer from that. And I understand where those where people are worried about that. I can understand that, because I am too, to a point. So I'm not saying that anybody doesn't have any reason to worry about it at all.
Yeah. And with that, we have more classic super chats to go through still. We have now gotten to Silver Nova, who says, I was 9 in 1984 when Ghostbusters came out. I really hope the kids today like Afterlife, but the cast does not have to be kids to make that happen. And then, let's see, we got that one. And we got that one. Adam Wofford said for $5, hey, here's a good fantasy for everyone. Boys and girls, the vision of Escaflown. A young girl is transported to another world. Check it out. All right, check out the fantasy anime Escaflown. I've heard of that. And then we got that one. Then we have, we got that one too from Augie Ben Doggy. And then we got the one from Lavendor. And not that old right guy said, I'm a bit behind, but I'm like Andre. I was 2 when 84 Ghostbusters came out. Remember watching it with fam a few years later. My son is now 2, and I can't wait to watch Afterlife with him, if it's good. Yeah, I think we got that one too. But yeah, that's a very good point indeed. And Craig Berkeley says for £10, I thought Masters of the Universe Revelation was fantastic. A grown-up continuation of the 80s cartoon with a story that gave so many characters a chance to shine while keeping He-Man in every episode. Is that you, Kevin Smith? It sounds like it, yeah. And then we got the one from Stephen Otten. We got the one from on Shang-Chi. And then we got that. And Michael Miller wondered, when do you think we're going to see the Matrix 4 trailer? We got that.
Oh, we're getting close then. Here.
Yeah. So then,
we may be able to finish this up before 4 hours today.
Yeah, maybe. And then Melvin Bellwood said, Tom, here's some money to keep your clothes on.
Yeah,
Naked Fame, better known as Esquire, the one thing I remember, the Pizza Commando. And Dash Attack says
Pizza
for $9.99. I still don't understand why people who claim male heroes are gone or sick of woke just give stuff like Naruto and Death Note a chance. There's probably a He-Man anime somewhere. And yeah, more and more people are checking out anime, and there's obviously a good
the
reason
2002 series was very heavily influenced by anime.
It was, and I would say like visually a little bit to its detriment, because story-wise, the 2002 series was absolutely fantastic and amazing, and I can't praise it highly enough.
Right.
Visually, the Revelations was the best we've ever gotten, I think. So that's the
sad part.
Yeah, if they could just have like given us remade the 2002 series with the art of Revelation, that would be like the best of all worlds. That would be perfect.
Yeah, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
Or even they could get even deeper into stuff that they couldn't really dive into too much in that series too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that despite this being a kids franchise, there's tons of stuff in this franchise that lends itself to some adult storytelling, and it's even in the vein of like Game of Thrones type shit in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but anyway.
Yeah, with that though, we are actually fully caught up, I think. I'm just going to do a double check, and then I think it's high time that we round out for the day. And,
I want to thank Chris, of course, for coming in earlier. If he's still listening, thank you for being here, and check him out later on Ryan Cannell's channel, and check out his YouTube channel, Film Threat. And other than that, head on over to Nerdrotic right now. Tell Gary we sent you. Make sure you say Midnight's Edge Raid. Michael Miller sends in a last-minute super chat. Says, so we're not talking about Star Trek like the old thumbnail said?
No, we're not. We're run out of time. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was.
We changed that thumbnail for a reason because
sorry
we
about
saw
that.
because we saw that. Okay, this one just goes by the wayside.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything new there anyway. So we were making a correlation.
No, really, the only really thing with that original story was basically Scott Mendelson saying in Forbes that because G.I. Joe flopped, Paramount has to watch out for Star Trek. So there really was very little new there. So you didn't miss out much. We'll get into it later.
We'll save that for another time, or maybe we'll get into it tomorrow. Maybe we'll save it for that. Until then, I just want to thank everybody for being here. So check out all the channels we just recommended, and check out Midnight's Edge Espanol. Check us out later. We got a stream over on Polly's channel, Latino Slant. Andre's going to be there. I'm going to be there. I think we're going to have a couple special announcements.
Well, at least a version of me is going to be there. So
a version of you?
Yeah, a version of me.
Oh, he pre-recorded it or something like that, I heard? Okay. So you'll be there in spirit one way or
I'll be there in spirit.
So head on over, tell Gary we sent you, and with that, I'll leave you with some koalas.
You'll leave us with apathetic precipitation marsupials.
But before we do that, here's one more goodie.
Oh, He-Man. He-Man.
Skeletor.
That's a dumb name.
Huh?
He-Man. He-Man. It's like the same thing twice. Why don't you just call yourself God?
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain. No fucks given, koalas in the rain.